it at 7:15. We'll call this meeting to order. If I can ask our Mr. Meadows, if you would lead us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
If we could, let's rise for a moment of silence, and then I'll lead us in the pledge. Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. That sounded really good up here, by the way.
All right. Very good. First up, public hearing, amend FY 22-23 budget. And I do believe we will have a presentation up on the screen.
Yeah, we've been asked if we could for this one this evening to bring up the resolution that is necessitating that public hearing this evening. There it is. Thank you very much, Jen. This is a request to appropriate an additional $5,466,622 to the school operating fund. And as it's noted in the reason for the public address, anytime we have an amendment that exceeds more than 1% of total expenditures in the currently adopted budget, and this is for an appropriation of additional state revenue and supplemental funds to the school operating fund. Angie, anything you want to add to that?
These funds were not known at the time that our budget was appropriated, so they've come back, the schools have come back to us and asked us to appropriate them at this time. And it also includes the $3.2 million that was originally going to be included in the school capital projects fund for use in the school operating fund.
Thank you.
I will now open up the public hearing. If you'd like to speak on this issue, if you will state your name and address, and you have 4 minutes to address the board. Seeing no one come forward. Oh, I'm sorry. Hello. If you'll state your name and address, you'll have 4 minutes, and then when the yellow light comes on,
Have 1 minute left.
assuming it works. If not, we'll
We tested it.
Okay, very good.
Alrighty, my
Thank
name
you.
is Courtney Akers. I live in Christiansburg, Virginia, and I am here to present Video Acres.
Okay, this is the public hearing for the resolution for the FY 23 supplement for the schools.
Could you explain all of the description of the public hearing, public address, you know, how you read through the whole thing?
Sure,
Thanks.
you want for the public hearing as well? Okay, all right, certainly. For the public hearing and public address, there's a sign-up sheet that was available outside the meeting room. Speakers are requested to provide their name, address, and phone number, and list the subject matter on the sign-up sheet. Following the names on the sign-up sheet, other speakers will be allowed. Each speaker has 4 minutes, whether speaking as an individual or a representative. All comments must be directed to the chair or other supervisors from the speaker's lectern. At the front of the room, please begin by stating your name and address. Debate between speakers and members of the audience will not be allowed. Speakers may leave any written statements or comments to the supervisors with the board clerk, and then speakers will be judged out of order should the speaker engage in any personal attacks, use of profanity, or abusive language, or debate with audience and not address the supervisors. Okay, all right. All right. Anyone to speak on this public hearing? Okay, no one coming forward. Then we will go around the room and see if the supervisors have any questions on this appropriation. And we'll start off with Supervisor Bone.
Is there anyone from the school division here that can speak to the 3.2 million for construction and why they want it to go to Chromebooks?
I talked to the interim superintendent earlier today, and she had a conflict this evening and was not able to attend.
Is there a timing issue with this, that it couldn't be delayed potentially so that they can show up?
I don't know if the 3.155 could be delayed. I don't know if the other funding needs to be appropriated tonight for the teacher pay amounts. I'm not sure about that. But I do know that this public hearing can be used whenever this appropriation comes forward. Is that correct, Marty?
Well, yeah, once we have the public hearing, the board can then approve it tonight or at a later meeting, right?
And we can change it and leave 3.2 out if we so chose.
Yeah, it's up to you on what you want to appropriate.
Okay. No other comments or questions, thank you.
Just can't appropriate more.
Supervisor DeMotts.
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Supervisor Fidzikowski.
Yeah, I too would prefer that somebody was here to answer some questions that we're going to have. I know I'm curious too, just like Supervisor Bowen, about the 3.2 million that's for construction, especially in light of for several meetings we've heard of desperate repairs that have to be made in the Blacksburg Strand, I know, and why they wouldn't be used for that instead of Chromebooks. So yeah, I would prefer that myself.
Supervisor King.
As I stated at the last meeting, I'd like to see that 3.2 million put back for construction. I mean, that's what it was earmarked for from the state. And I'd like to see us wait till we could have some representative from the schools here.
I think we do.
Vice Chair Biggs.
I understand the concern about the construction money, but I also am concerned about what Angie brought up about the money being used for teacher salaries, because, I mean, July 1st is coming up. Contracts have gone out, and teachers are thinking that they're getting a certain amount of money. So if that money is in here, I think it would be important to go ahead and pass that money, even if you are questioning the school construction part of it. That's a concern I have for folks.
I know that no one here is from the school board to answer our questions, but if the county can, did we get any response at our last meeting when Dr. Whitaker presented the request for the amendment for the FY 22-23 budget that included this new proposed additional over $5.4 million additional funding from the state? There were some concerns and questions raised. Has the county received any answers or explanations prior in regard? The questions I had were, of course, the error from the FY 21-22 operating budget numbers, the $1.6 million. Have we received any of that information?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And that includes in 2020, where we've asked several times publicly about the $1.7 million that was spent for other needs rather than applied to the teachers' raises. We've not
No,
received.
we haven't.
Okay. Looking at these additional state revenue of over $5.4 million, in my understanding that over 3.1 was earmarked for school construction,
Yes.
and 1.7 plus was earmarked for the teachers' 5% raises.
I believe that is correct.
I also have concerns that the school in their instruction here that they presented, and we also, at our last meeting, had questions and concerns over the Chromebook, and Ms. Whitaker said she was going to relay that to the board, and we have not had any communication.
Correct.
Okay, all right, just making sure. And I know it's hard because you're not the school, so I don't mean to put you on the spot to answer for it. Just answer what you know. My concern, again, is the $1.3 million that's already been stated by Supervisor Fidzikowski using for Chromebooks, which is an instructional, not construction costs. As my understanding, the construction would be non-recurring, and these Chromebooks, we're told that are something that has to be replaced every 4 to 5 years for that. So that is an instruction cost, not construction costs. The school's also requesting that $1.8 million be placed in operation and maintenance. After we've heard several weeks ago about the dire needs for some of the Blacksburg Elementary School strands, I'm questioning why, and again, I don't know that you can answer this because this is a school question, but why are these not going to be put in capital funds instead of operating funds?
I don't know that.
But that would be construction, would be capital.
Generally, that is where we put the capital, yes.
Okay. With the Christiansburg High School renovations that we just approved $85 million for a loan, and then hearing with the Blacksburg strand of elementary schools, those needs. I know that they had mentioned, the school board had mentioned at the last meeting that $3.1 million, I think they said wasn't a lot of money, but we also allocated and approved and asked for a loan of $5 million additional to help with those Christiansburg High School renovations and to address some of those needs.
That's correct.
5 million plus 3.1 is $8.1 million. You could do a lot of school construction with $8 million. So again, since the school's not here to address those issues, these are questions that need to be answered. In addition to this, and I know that $200,000 they explained was going to be for gas because of the recent inflation in the gas prices. Is that correct? Is that what everyone remembers? I think that was for gas.
I think that is for gas,
I think that's
yes.
correct. And then here, I guess these are in categories for instruction. Do we know, is the $250,000 that they were going to do for those COVID positions, do we know the revenue source here from that? Is there any way to tell?
No, from the information that was provided, I don't know if that was from these funds or from part of the school transfer from the general fund.
Okay. And sometimes it's hard when these categories, and we do, the budget is done by categories, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And not line budget item?
Right.
Okay. Is there a process that we could do for a line budget item?
No, there's two ways to do it. You could appropriate the money to the schools in just a total aggregate amount, but then they would be able to move it around like they want. Or you do it by these 7 categories that the code sets out. And then once they're approved in those categories, they cannot move it from category to category without coming back to you and getting approval for that. But how they spend it within the category is their discretion, not this board. So once you approve the budget, like you can see some of the categories are listed: instruction, transportation, operation, maintenance, capital, food, the food cafeteria, and I forget what a couple others are. The main ones are instruction, transportation, and capital probably.
So if they're not, we can't do line item, that's what you're saying?
No,
Okay.
no, you do category.
Do
Yeah,
category.
some people may call that line item, but it's really category.
And that's what we do now is categorical.
Yeah.
Category.
And that's how we appropriate it to them, is by category.
And so if we have questions about like this, like right now, the amount, 3.4 million state revenues, instruction, is there a way to get a greater detail or breakdown on what that actually means?
Yeah, you could ask for that. Yeah, I mean, whether they give it to you or not, but you could ask for that.
I'm sorry, did you say we could ask for it, whether they give it to us or not? What,
No, you could ask for it. I don't know whether they will give you what you want, but you can ask for it, is what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you can ask for more information. But I don't know what they will give you, is what I'm saying.
they wouldn't,
I
okay.
don't know if they will. I don't know.
That's a question for us to ask them.
Yeah.
Because obviously, hopefully, they would want to be transparent and
Right.
explain where tax dollars are going. Okay. All right. Because it can be a little confusing here when we're trying to look at the budget here and understand. I just want to be clear to make sure everybody's accurate with that. Supervisor DeMott?
What are the 7 categories? I've got instruction, transportation, operations and maintenance, school nutrition.
Capital, construction. Do you know the other two?
I think there's a health one too.
Yeah, I think
Nutrition.
administration, attendance, and health is one. And then, is there another one?
Debt service.
Debt service, yeah.
Okay, that's 7. Thank you.
And those categories are set by the state Department of Education.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have a question or follow-up?
I do.
Supervisor Fenn?
So, is there any information about how much is needed for the teacher raises?
I don't know that specific amount. I just know that the 3.155 was not going to go toward teacher raises. And the operation and maintenance amount and the appropriation was going to be part of that school construction fund, and the rest of it is in in instruction. So we can come up with the categories if you want to pull that out.
How do we do that? If everybody agreed to support the teacher's 5% raise, what would that look like? So we could vote on that today.
I'll calculate the number and tell you what that is for the instruction line, and then the transportation would stay the same.
And the other question about the Chromebooks. When I asked the question earlier, they're not part of the bill that the governor signed was for construction, improvement of classes, or something like that. And Chromebooks don't do that. That's for the students' study. What category would Chromebooks normally be in?
They would be normally charged to instruction. I don't know if the schools had spoken with someone at the state, at the Department of Education, or some other group to find out if Chromebooks were eligible to be used for this, with this money. I know what the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee language said, but I don't know if the schools had further discussion with the state or not.
And if we approved it, and they would have to justify it, or not really? Who double checks that people are using their money appropriately?
The school's financial statements are audited with the county's financial statements all together, and so it would be looked at that time. And I do not know the reporting requirements because it's a grant. I don't know what the reporting requirements under the grant are for the schools to the state.
Is that something that we would be liable? So we wouldn't be liable for use, inappropriate use? If Chromebooks, according to this department in Richmond, is not okay, but they used it for it, what would happen?
Are you asking about a legal opinion or financially what would happen? Financially, it would be up to the board if you wanted to provide more general fund dollars to cover that. I don't know about if you're asking about a legal question as far as that's concerned.
Does somebody get in trouble if it's used for something that, I'm not saying someone, this body, because we're not following the intent of the law?
You're appropriating it at that high level like Marty was talking about, so I would think that by appropriating by category, then they're representing that they're using it for the appropriate use.
And if it's found that they're not, then what happens?
I'm not sure.
Has that ever happened?
Not that I know of here.
So I would love to eventually make a motion to support our teachers at the 5% level also, like Supervisor Biggs. I think we can carve out what we need to do for that. And it sounds like we need more details for the other funds. Transportation makes sense to me too. I would be happy to vote for that too, because it's not cheap to buy gas, for sure. But I'd hate for us to be, not responsible or following the intent of the bill and things like that, and facilitating not following it to the letter. So that's what I would feel comfortable with.
Marty, just to clarify, to make sure, so Supervisor Bone asked an excellent question. Who's on the hook if the reporting requirements are not met, being that even though they're saying it's going to be used in this category, we're the ones appropriating that money? What type of recourse does the state have, or is the Board of Supervisors going to be liable for it? And then two, as a Board of Supervisors, if, they're grouping this instruction, if they say they use it for A and they don't, they tell me they're going to use it for one certain thing and then they do not without explanation, justification, what kind of recourse does the board have to hold them accountable for taxpayers' money?
I mean, I'm not sure this board does, but I think the state could. I mean, if it's a grant, they could be subject to having to pay the money back with penalties. I don't know. Just like Angie said, depends on the terms of the grant. Like, we got money through the state and feds for some of those grants during the COVID times, and there were penalties, provisions in those grants saying if you didn't, you were subject to having to pay that money back if you didn't spend it the right way. So I would assume that there's probably similar language in these type of things. There's also, if they come in and audit, there could be, there could be ramifications by that as well. So, this board, if we appropriate it in those categories, then they're telling us they're going to spend that money in those categories.
And what recourse if they don't do that?
I think then they're most likely violating some type of financial standards, and the state would probably step in.
And our auditors could also issue an opinion that was not a clean opinion. They could issue a modified opinion that would affect the county and the schools overall, and have compliance findings in our audit as well.
And likewise, you'd obviously lose confidence too with that board if that would happen.
Right, a lack of trust
Yeah,
and confidence if they tell us one thing and don't, without justification and explanation. Do we know what was the actual cost to do the whole 5% raises for the teachers?
Don't know.
We don't know. We don't know that from the school system?
I don't think so, no.
We ever received that. It was part of their budget, but I don't think they broke that out as a separate.
And this, we have given $2 million additional, that is separate, that we've already appropriated for school operating, correct? That's not in this, correct? The county did. We've already appropriated that.
The transfer.
The transfer, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
So we're going to appropriate state funding, and we don't know from the school what the cost will be for, they have to know what the cost is.
There's a cost included in their budget. I don't know that right now, but they presented a cost at some point of what the estimate was.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
So
Supervisor.
we do know the $200,000 is for gas and transportation. Is that something that we know?
I'm not 100% sure about that because there are some salary costs in the transportation, but I think that's what they,
It's primarily, you know.
yes.
The $1.7 million that Supervisor King referenced this meeting, previous meetings, it was my understanding when Mr. Kranz and Dr. Meyer presented to us that they were eventually going to get those raises back to the teachers, right? But that never happened, or at least that's my understanding also. So I personally don't think that we should prevent the 5% raises at this point in time, especially if we can itemize and find the dollar amount and just approve that, as opposed to, oh, they want $3.4 million in instruction, and that's going to cover lots of things, and teacher raises. I'd feel just fine doing instruction for that specific amount. And that's something we could do at a later time, right? I personally don't feel comfortable, given that we don't even know how much that would be, to do anything today, unfortunately. And they could make those raises retroactive.
That's true.
There's no reason why they couldn't do that. Say we approve it on the, you know, the first meeting in July.
I don't
because-
know how that affects their contracts. Do you?
I do.
Yeah, yes, we haven't, we have already closed the public comment.
I beg your pardon. I did not hear you close the public comment period. That's
We
the only
did.
reason I'm standing here.
Yes, sir, we did close the public hearing
A simple
comment.
piece of information about what the interim superintendent
Can
said
you,
at the last meeting.
would you like to address that during public address, sir? Public address.
Certainly, but it involves your discussion. I was just trying to help.
Thank you, thank you. Any further discussion?
Does anybody know how it would affect their contracts?
I don't know.
Well, I have a question. If the problem seems to be the specific amount for the construction, the school construction seems to be what everyone is having a question about, right?
That and the raises.
Can the school construction be taken out and dealt with later and the rest of it passed tonight?
But we don't know how much is needed for the raises. It'd be very helpful to know that, you know.
I'm not comfortable or confident in appropriating any money until we have some detailed budget information. Order, please. Order, please. If we don't know what the cost for the now I'm all for the employees getting their raises, but this is a public hearing, and there are questions that we've been asking that have not been communicated to this board. And so when you're saying you don't know what the final cost to give the raises will be, and you're wanting us to appropriate, I'm not comfortable doing that at all until we get some answers. I do know the stress that it's going to put on for the and I do understand the concerns with the teachers not getting their contracts. But the school board should have been here to answer these questions, and they should have been answering these questions before this meeting. Order, please.
It seems like it's, and I know it's important to us as a board to take care of our school system. But it looks like if it was important to them, somebody would be here tonight to answer questions.
I don't doubt that it's important to them.
Well, I'm not
We
saying it's
can't-
not, but where they at? Somebody.
We can't, you know, we're not going to get that answer until after this meeting. Let's not throw, you know, suggestions that it's not important to them. I can guarantee that they're going to come back and say, this is very important. And I can believe that. No doubt in my mind. It's just, okay, right now we need a little bit of detail, and this is, I treat this position as if this was my money, would I be giving $3.4 million for instruction, but I don't know what that is? I definitely would give the money, if it was appropriate, for the 5% raises, if I knew what that was, but I don't know what that is. So, I don't doubt that this is very important to them. I'm sure there's not one person that's related to the school board or the school division that would ever say anything otherwise. I certainly can't show up at every meeting either. Nevertheless, I don't feel comfortable without the information, but I do feel comfortable with the transportation because I think we're all agreeing that the $200,000 was primarily for gas. I don't know if that's really going to get them what they want. What they want is their 5% raise come July 1 for their contracts. I'd be willing to do a special meeting in order to get it to them personally, if that meant, maybe Wednesday or something like that, but I'm not comfortable at this point.
Also goes back to the 1.7 million in 2020 that wasn't given to for the teachers. I know I keep harping on that, but it's important to know where that money is, and who's to say if we go ahead and move this, that there's a guarantee, since we're not sure unless there's from the state recourse for that. I want detailed answers, so I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this.
I feel pretty sure that the schools, when they review this meeting, will be disappointed in themselves for missing it, because we could have some of these answers and be able to move forward tonight. This is on our new business agenda for later on in the meeting. If we table it for tonight, would we move it to our July 11th? That would be our next available meeting, according to my schedule.
That's correct.
And then hopefully the school staff will be here to answer the questions.
Angie, should we do, and maybe for the supervisors, do an actual form or letter in writing? Because there are so many questions, I'm sure.
That would probably be helpful if you can send me your questions. I could compile them and we could send them to the schools.
Yeah, I had already made a note of that I think due to the fact, and I agree with Supervisor DeMott, I'm sure the school folks will be reviewing this meeting by video tonight, but I do think it would be good that we get all that in writing and send it to them so they'll know exactly what it is that this board's looking for.
And including if you have questions on a more detailed, instead of grouping all of this together, it's about as clear as mud. I'd like to have a little bit more clarity and clarification, and I'm sure our taxpayers would like that too. For that.
I'd also like to I'd like to get the answer about the $1.7 million from a couple years ago, but I don't want that to hold us up. I think that they can give us enough information for today, for today's 5% raises, to move forward with that. And we'll just know to be that much more careful next time to allow X dollars for instruction. We say it's only going to teachers' salaries versus instruction is a big category and they can use it anywhere in that category. So hopefully we can be more particular moving forward and have more specific information.
Marty, is there a mechanism that we can be more particular? I'm just asking, because you said we've got 7 categories and they have to spend it within the categories. Can we, through an action of this board, appropriate it to a specific line item, or it's just to the category, and then if they don't spend it within, they could say we're going to spend $1 million on shop teachers, and then they spend that $1 million on pottery teachers instead. We have no recourse.
No. That's their discretion within.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do understand
Oh, I was
that
just making
part,
sure.
but I think in order for us to help support getting the teachers' raises, for example, we could, I would imagine, have two line items here, both for instruction. One for X dollars, and they could say, yep, that's what we're using for 5% raises. The other line item for instruction is all these other miscellaneous things, right? So we do have there is some,
See, that all goes into one
I
instruction
understand that,
pot. Yeah.
but they would be acknowledging
Oh, yeah, for sure.
specifically what those things are for, and we could, therefore follow up and make
That's
sure
why
that
we
they were
have
in
the
fact.
issue of the $1.7
That's
million
right.
is because we were told that.
Right. After asking
yeah.
several times.
Yeah, but we have to give them another chance. I don't see us not being able to give them another chance because there's no other lever or tool that we can use to be
Right.
as specific as we really want to be and still helpful. So, anyway, I've asked all my questions.
And Supervisor Bone, you're right. I think you were trying to say is that we just want a little bit more detailed. We want detailed. And, if they're going to say it's used for A and they don't, we want explanation, justification, not just, oh, well, because that's not, we're
build
responsible. Yeah, we got to make
In
decisions.
fact, it shouldn't be that difficult, right? They are going to give the 5% raises July 1, and you can see the money flowing out immediately. So you can see it. And we can't stop it once we've appropriated it, but we certainly can stop the next thing we appropriate.
And I think that's what we're doing now. We're stopping because we don't have clarity and we need some, detailed communication and transparency. And, yes, ma'am, Vice Chair Biggs.
Okay. I think first of all, we need to say that the 5% was for all Montgomery County school employees, not just teachers. And the second thing that I think is very evident is the falling down of the communication between the two boards because we did not have a meeting. And the other problem is we have not had a school-county liaison meeting in a while. These are critical meetings that need to be held because the relationship between the Board of Supervisors and the school board is a very important one. And it's one that you have to nurture like you nurture anything else that's important to you and as far as relationship. And that hasn't happened. The third thing I want to point out is we're dealing with a whole different leadership from the central office. And things that happened in the past with the past leadership that Supervisor King has brought up, that was with a different leadership team. Now we're dealing with folks that are trying to go in, figure out everything, and come forward. And I really do believe they're trying to be transparent. I was thinking about it tonight, like how in the past we've had someone here, when we've had questions and all. But then I was thinking to myself, like, did the new leadership actually think we were going to have questions tonight? Are they in town? Are they on vacation? I don't know. So I agree we have to, with what Supervisor Vaughn said, we've got to give them a chance. And I think, really work on this relationship of working together. A lot of these questions could have been worked out. And I agree with Chair Blevins, questions were asked and they weren't sent back, which has made this a more difficult conversation. But I think instead of maybe we should focus on the positive, like, hey, we've got it out there now, let's see what we can do and let's see what we can make it better. And I am very concerned about the employees and their salaries and the contracts. That really bothers me. Because I've talked to a lot of people within the school system and, they've been nervous about their contracts. And teachers and school employees are just like anything else across Montgomery County. You know, it's hard to keep employees. So I'm not sure what we should do about that tonight, if any of this money specifically was going towards those salaries or not, but that sort of worries me. So that's what I would like to say.
Vice Chair Biggs, those are the statements and although I don't agree all of them, because some of these questions, and we do want to move forward, and we want to work on that relationship, but Dr. Whitaker was second in command, so I am concerned when your school board doesn't know what's going on, and your superintendent, your assistant superintendent under Dr. Meyer doesn't know what's going on. So even though it is new leadership, these are questions that we need to have answered. I am all for moving forward and being transparent as possible. I shouldn't say as possible, everything should be transparent. But these are questions that we have constantly asked and have not been answered. And I'll just be honest, I have a lack of confidence right now because we've been told things and not answered questions, but I'm all for moving forward and building those relationships. The school board did cancel the last joint. I know it's very hard. We've rescheduled, they've rescheduled. I know that we haven't had the school liaison meeting, but these would have been the same questions I asked at that meeting, and if they couldn't answer them 2 weeks ago. So, Supervisor King?
One thing that we can do from this moment on is when we allocate money to the schools, if it's not put where they asked us to put it, if they move it somewhere else, the following year's budget, we can deduct that much money from them.
Well, if they move it, they have to ask permission to move it from one category to another. The problem that occurs is if it's within the category.
If it's like the last one, they said we need to give raises. And you heard Tommy Krantz sitting here in our meeting. When I asked him again, he said the administration done something else with it. Didn't say what it was, just moved it. So if that happens again, we can just deduct that from their next budget. I mean,
We can deduct as much as we want.
Right.
I do agree with you with that.
but the thing is, the buck stops with us sitting here.
Yeah, I think it would be more constructive, perhaps, if we give this new interim leadership the benefit of the doubt, because I know how hard it can be taking over from even your boss not being transparent. Who am I to say that Dr. Meyer wasn't transparent to Dr. Whitaker? I have no idea. But I can see that could happen. But giving the new interim administrators a chance to answer our questions, I think is completely fair. I think also, I would certainly appreciate if, I don't know if it's okay for our people, like Ms. Hill or whomever, to double check for us, to make sure that the money is going to the right places, getting the proof that it is going to where they say. I imagine that that's possible for us.
I think it would be possible if we are directed to do that.
Do you mean directed by the board?
Yes.
And to follow up on Marty's comment, he says we could ask the school board for more details, but you're alluding that they may or may not give us that information?
I mean, you
Well,
can
that's
have-
their board's
Yeah, by
decision.
law,
Yeah.
they don't have to. That's what he's saying. By law, they don't have to.
By law, they do not have to tell us detailed information on how taxpayers'
Right.
money that we're going to appropriate is spent.
All they need is those 7 categories, is what Marty's saying. But if they want to work well with us, they'll be more transparent with us to make sure that we're doing our work to support the money going to the right places. I would think. I don't see why they wouldn't. Have we asked that before as diligently as we're asking now? Perhaps not, but I think that there's opportunity here that we could get that information. And I think it's important. That helps reassure all of us and the community to know that the money's going where we expect it would be going, so.
I think
don't-
we're
I don't-
also, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think, I mean, we've only been on the board for 5 years, but I can't recall a single time that they came to us with a need. We need this, and we didn't grant it.
Right.
I think we've always done that, so I don't think there should be any fear of, asking. So I don't understand that, but I think we're all saying we're when we get to new business, we're going to table this. So I think that's good.
Although I would encourage us to pass the transportation. I don't see why we wouldn't.
I think just because it's 200,000 of 5.4 million, and it's not critical between now and July 11th to their operations.
Or we wouldn't think that it would be.
If it was, they would be here.
Sounds good to me. But what I do want to be clear about is at least I do support the 5% raises, and hopefully will encourage my colleagues up here to support that when we get the information that we are looking for and that we've talked about tonight. So
I don't think anyone on the board is not wanting to support the employees. It's a matter of, once we give it, are the employees going to get it? $1.7 million is in question. Where's the money? Where was it spent? Marty, on our state basic budget, Supervisor Bone had just said we don't have to give more or appropriate. We are required under law to do the basic fund for SOQs, is that correct?
Yeah, you're required to meet the standards of quality or SOQ. That's the minimum that you're required to give them.
but we've typically tried to extend that to all employees.
Absolutely, we've always
Yeah.
given well more
We've
than
tried,
that, correct?
yeah, we've tried to do that every
There's
single
no
time.
school system in Virginia that has minimum SOQs staff, because it is so outdated, you would not have anything. That's just, if you really look into it and study it, you'll find that out.
Right.
And it's my understanding, at least for the last 5 to 6 years, this board, and I've not been on here 5 or 6 years, so, but it's my understanding that the county has always given more than the budget. Is that correct? We've always given more than the base budget requirement.
Do you mean more than the SOQs?
Even more than that, even from their basic, what they required, what their operating budget was the following year. We've never gone below that. Is that correct? Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
okay.
The time I've been here, we've never reduced their budget. There was, I think, one year that we held the county contribution the same, but we've never reduced their budget, to my memory.
Always been supportive of that. And because we've given extra, they have carryover. How does that carryover monies, where does that go in the categories?
When the money carries over and it's not spent, it goes back to you in the general fund. And then they come back to you and say, will you reappropriate that to us? And then they ask you to do it within whatever categories. So however they want to use it, if they use it for construction or use it for instruction or construction, they got to tell you, and then you appropriate it back to them in whatever categories they've asked and you approve.
And they generally do say what they intend to use those funds for.
Right.
So the carryovers come back to our general fund.
By law.
By
It just
law.
happens when when it's not spent, it goes back to the county general fund.
So my question is,
Unappropriated.
it's still their money, we just have,
Oh, it's your money.
At the end of June, if the money comes back to the county, that's why there'll be a request at an upcoming meeting from the school board to reappropriate their year-end carryover funds.
Yeah.
You have to
So
go,
money's unappropriated at that moment, yeah. It's in the.
so
general
it's,
fund.
it comes back to us.
Correct.
And then they request it, and then we give it back. But we would not have to, we could use it for other services or other things because it wasn't used?
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. Hill, am I correct, in the last 6 years, they've had an average of over 4 million in carryover?
Yes, that's correct. We appropriate the funds to them, but we don't actually transfer the money to them until they need it. So we say the funds are coming back to us, but technically they don't get transferred to the schools until the schools spend them. So the appropriation rolls back to the general fund, and then that's what is carried forward. We're not really moving cash back and forth between the funds.
That's a good clarification.
How much is carry forward for the county, not counting the schools? Because we carry forward money too,
Usually ours is around $1,750,000 to $1 million.
and their budget's like twice ours or something like that.
No, it's more than that.
3 times
that.
ours, maybe?
70% of yours.
70%, you said. Could that carryover money, if the board, to make sure I'm clear, could the carryover money be put towards capital?
Yes, it could be if you chose to do that.
But they usually spend it on one-time expenditures that are capital and maintenance. That started many years ago when I was first on the board, you know, when roofs were falling in the schools and stuff. So they're usually pretty good about that.
Well, that's my question. If you're having roofs falling in, you shouldn't have $4 million a year carryover money. You would be spending that on those dire needs. Am I saying that? Is that correct?
There's probably timing issues, but, 4 million out of, what is their budget?
200.
Yeah, is less than 2% of their budget.
Still, $4 million is a lot of money.
It is, but managing a large budget isn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. I would recommend that we don't necessarily table the $1.7 million that Supervisor King continues to refer to, but I would ask that we prioritize the requests to the interim administrators on things that we can control at this moment, so we can move those things forward and then say, can you get the answer to the $1.7 million at our second meeting in July versus the first meeting in July. Give them a deadline. We've never given them a deadline, so I think that's probably fair too. At least we can move forward and get the teacher the raises, hopefully, and perhaps they just need help prioritizing what they're doing.
Anyone else? I'm not comfortable moving forward at all. Any other comments?
I like what Supervisor Fidzikowski said. When it gets to new business, I think we're all kind of okay about that, or at least most of us are.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on. Second public hearing, special use permit, Mountain Vista Land and Livestock LLC, Mitigation Bank.
Good evening. Well, bear with me just one moment. So as you stated, this is a special use permit to expand an existing mitigation bank. You may remember we had an ordinance amendment related to this in 2021. This is the second one you have seen. The first one was for an entire new bank. This was a bank that was established previously and before the ordinance required the special use permit, and now they are requesting to expand that. So previously it was a legal, non-conforming use, and this will bring it into conformity plus allow the expansion that they're requesting. So this property is located in the central western portion of the county. It is located off of Switchback Road and Crab Creek Road. The property consists of 2 parcels. Both are zoned agriculture A1 and they total 119.02 acres. The existing nutrient bank, as I stated, was created in 2017, and at that time it consisted of 14.81 acres. All the available credits in that bank have been sold as of this date. So now they are requesting an expansion to add approximately 5 acres to the existing nutrient bank, and that will include 4,000 linear feet of Crab Creek and the surrounding buffer area. It would increase the number of credits that they have available for sale, and as I stated, it does require a special use permit because it increases the area of the non-conforming use. This is your zoning map. It shows everything around it is also zoned agriculture A1. You can see the railroad tracks running along the property. These are some images of the current site. This is looking Switchback Road, looking back towards the property, and you can see where the public hearing signs were posted. This is the image from Crab Creek Road, and this is showing the site entrance here where the vehicle is parked. This is also the entrance here at Crab Creek. This shows where the creek starts. This would be the start of the expansion area. And then these are images that we obtained with the drone through the help of public information. So Becky went out with Justin, and we were able to get some drone images, and we actually have a drone video that I'm going to show you a portion of that we obtained that day. It was very, very useful, and we hope to do more of this. So we could not access the site on foot without hiking for probably a half a day or so. So this also saved a lot of staff time. This is flying along the Crab Creek. So this is the area that they will be restoring. Basically what that involves is removing any invasive species that they might have, replacing it with native species, any stream bank restoration that is needed to ensure the flow. A lot of times erosion will build a dam or so to speak, so they'll clear all that out so it flows more naturally again. And it restores this area. They do have to put this in a conservation easement for perpetuity. So it will always be in that conservation easement. And then developers will purchase those credits to then offset the damage that they may be doing to other wetlands during theirs. This zooms over and you'll see the railroad tracks come up through here. So you're still going along the 4,000 linear feet. And then I'm going to stop it right here because we then go backwards. So yeah, let me get my show going again here. These are some other drone images of the site. We took these while they were flying and making the video. We actually have a couple that have a train going through, so that was really cool too. We do want to thank Becky Hertland. She spent the morning out with Justin. We could not have done this without the support of public information. Again, we do plan to use her. As I mentioned, the previous mitigation bank, that has been completed. So they are going to be going out Wednesday morning, actually, and doing drone footage of the completion, and public information is going to promote that for us. So these are the construction plans. We tried to get an overall sheet. Basically, these plans are mostly erosion and sediment control, but they do show the areas of limits. So you can see this area here in the middle is the stream, and then the shaded areas are where they're going to be doing various sorts of mitigation efforts. And I will go through all 4 of those just so you can see the length of the project. You can see the railroad tracks down here to the bottom. So traffic impact will be minimal. No new roads or entrances are proposed. They will use the existing entrance to access the site with their small equipment and machinery that they'll need to get to everything. The site will not be open to the public. All traffic will be incidental to existing agricultural operations. So this is within an existing farm. The farm mainly is located at a higher topography from where the creek is. So this area, once it's restored, will not be messed with at all. It will remain. VDOT did take no exception to the project. So it does restore 4,000 linear square feet. It enhances the water quality. It restores native grasses, and it also enhances the wildlife habitat for the area. It introduces additional nutrients, which is why they can then create the bank, and it does preserve some existing viewshed. So this area is located within a flood hazard area, Zone A, which is very common for wetlands. So that's not out of line, and they would have to get a zoning permit just because it is within the flood zone. But everything will be documented, and they will not raise the base flood elevation. So that's part of the mitigation efforts. Is nothing they do will raise that base flood elevation. It remains the same. If anything, it would lower the base flood elevation because it does add some additional vegetation. In the comprehensive plan, it does meet several of our goals. Some of the land use goals, it is in a rural area. Those areas we have stated should be agricultural. We also recommend conservation easements in those areas. And then several of our environmental resources goals are met. It does preserve natural resources. It establishes some wildlife habitats and enhances those. Through the conservation easement, it does provide open space. It maintains the agricultural quality of the property, and it does help our streams, rivers, and surface waters. So development throughout the county continues to impact those streams. This project will allow the opportunity to offset those impacts by purchasing these credits. It allows the property owner to generate income through the sale of the credits while at the same time maintaining the open space and conserving the property. It does guarantee preserved open space through a deed of restrictions and an easement. No additional traffic noise, lighting impacts are proposed, and a full review of the erosion sediment control plan will be considered at site plan review. That plan was actually submitted, which is what promulgated us to tell them they needed a special use permit. So we actually have went ahead and started some review of that plan. The Planning Commission recommended approval with 2 conditions. The site shall be developed in general conformance with the plans entitled Crab Creek Vista Nutrient Bank dated February 25th, 2022. All permits from other agencies must be submitted to the zoning administrator prior to approval of the site plan and issuance of county permits. Those include, they need permits from DEQ. Sometimes they need something from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers because they're within a stream. So all those permits would be submitted prior to site plan approval. That motion passed on a 6-0 vote. We had 3 members absent that evening. All adjoining property owners were notified. Staff did receive 3 inquiries, but once we described what the proposal was, they were very supportive. There were not any members to speak at the public hearing, and the signs, as you saw in previous pictures, were placed on the property according to code. So with that, I will take any questions you have for me.
Okay, we'll go around the room. Supervisor DeMotts, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but if I could say as if I was delivering a public comment, in the town limits of Christiansburg, and I do recognize that this is outside in the county, there are two creeks that the EPA and the Clean Water Act have labeled as troubled in some way. So they're exceeding their total maximum daily load. Crab Creek in particular exceeds on fecal coliform. Fecal coliform, yes, bacteria, thank you, and sediment. And so the improvements, though, I think these would be probably upstream from what's going into the town limits of Christiansburg. It's all flowing directly into the New River.
Correct.
And so any improvements upstream will help downstream problems that we know already exist in Crab Creek. So I think that this is a very nice use of the land and will greatly impact the quality of the water that's flowing directly into the New River. So thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Supervisor Bone.
I love the drone pictures.
We did too. You should have seen the excitement.
because of the other bank that we visited that is fully done. It was fun walking out there, but I like the drone. Thank you.
We will be using it in the future. We've already started identifying times when we can use it, so we will be doing that in the future.
Excellent. Supervisor Fizikowski.
Yeah, I like the idea, but I was thinking, since you showed the pictures of the railroad tracks, when a 2-mile-long coal train is rumbling on through there, what kind of nutrients are they adding to the soil?
Exactly. Hopefully some of the vegetation that they put in there will help pull some of that out before it actually makes it to the stream, although it's just going to seep down into the groundwater and get there eventually. But hopefully they'll be able to do some stronger mitigation in that area, but you are correct, that is an impact.
Is that a consideration before a site is picked or selected?
I am not sure. I would have to ask the developer. I don't know what exactly they look at when they look at the wetland sites. I know it has to be an area that's probably otherwise undevelopable. The flood zone does that to a large portion of those areas. But I'm not sure how they look at the closeness of the railroad tracks.
Thank you.
Supervisor King.
I have no question, but do appreciate you working with the homeowner, landowners, and I think it's going to benefit a lot of people.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs.
No questions, but thanks for the presentation.
No questions, but again, love the drone. Thank Becky for her hard work. We look forward to seeing more of those types of presentation. I think this is a great effort to increase the mitigation efforts. That's going to be great. Okay.
Thank you all.
We will now open up the public hearing for the public on this special use permit. If you'd like to speak on the special use permit for the Mountain Vista Land and Livestock expansion of the mitigation bank, you have 4 minutes. If you will please say your name and address. You have 4 minutes to speak, and then the warning light will blink yellow to give you a 1-minute warning.
Great,
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you. My name is John Roller with Ecosystem Services. We are located at 1102 Carlton Avenue in Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm the agent working on behalf of Mountain Vista Land and Livestock, the developer of the project and the applicant for the special use permit. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. To address the question about the railroad, generally we do kind of have some site search parameters. Unfortunately, we can't control everything, especially with Christiansburg draining to most of the site and having a neighbor like the Norfolk Southern Railroad there. But Doug Jones, one of the landowners, is here in the audience tonight, and I'm sure he can speak anecdotally about it. But generally, we're staying out of their right of way, and so all the work is on Mountain Vista Land and Livestock property as well. And so certainly we hope we don't have any of those issues, but we're trying to keep the stream as far away from the railroad. We think that benefits them as well, because you certainly see a lot of eroded stream banks along railroad foundations, and that's certainly an issue for them as well. I did also just want to make a personal thank you to all the planning staff. They've been a tremendous help. I've not gone through a special use permit application before, and Mr. Sanders, Brenda and Bree, and Ms. Nestor have been incredibly helpful during this time, and I really appreciate their guidance and assistance. It's made a very smooth process, and so I was a little nervous going through it, but they've been very helpful. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you to the board.
Thank you.
And I'm here to answer any questions anybody else has.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this public hearing? Hello, if you'll say your name and address, you'll have 4
Hi,
minutes.
I'm Doug Jones, and I live at 600 Switchback Road, Christiansburg, and my wife Helen and I are the principals of Mountain Vista Land and Livestock. We own and farm the property, and we've been working with John for a few years on this now, but we're actually starting phase 2. In phase 1, we fenced the cattle off the property. I studied hard about it. I've not been able to figure out how to keep my cattle from passing gas. However, I have figured out how to keep them from standing in the stream all summer long doing other unsanitary things. So we've got it fenced off, and as part of phase 1, we also planted a lot of hardwood vegetation along the stream banks to try to help with the oxygen exchange and improvement. And the stream is in pretty bad shape. It snakes around, and there's sediment islands, and there's pockets of muddy water that foams up, and I'm real excited about the changes that are going to happen. And I got to give John a lot of credit. And we're also working with a construction company out of North Carolina that specializes in these types of projects. So it should go really well, and hopefully we'll have a successful project we can report back to you all. But thank you for your consideration, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. If anyone else would like to come forward to speak on this public hearing. Seeing no one come forward, we will close this public hearing. Next, public address. Let me go over the guidelines again for the public address. We have a sign-up sheet. I will call the names from the sign-up sheet. Then after I call all the names on the sign-up sheet, if anyone else would like to speak, they're welcome to do so. You will come forward. Each speaker will have 4 minutes, whether speaking as an individual or a representative. All comments must be directed to the chair and to the Board of Supervisors. Please begin by stating your name and address. Debate between speakers and members of the audience will not be allowed. Speakers may leave any written statements or comments to the supervisors with our board clerk. Speakers will be judged out of order should the speaker engage in any personal attacks, use of profanity or abusive language, or debate with the audience and not address the supervisors. Proper etiquette would be not to applaud or make any loud noises. So the first one on our list is Miss Courtney Akers. If you will come forward. If you will state your address, you'll have 4 minutes, and then the light will start blinking yellow. That will be your 1-minute warning.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
My name is Courtney Akers. I live in Christiansburg, and I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share my video with you guys. Thank you. I'm here to present Video Acres. Hi, my name's Courtney Akers. I lived in Christiansburg, Virginia. I went to Christiansburg High School until 11th grade. I was raped July 14th, 2017 by Jeb Dodson. He was a great friend of mine that went throughout high school with me. He continued to bully me after I took him to court and got a protective order. And the response with Christiansburg High School, as they told me what I could do about the situation, is they wanted to switch me from the classes I had with him. They put me in 3 classes as coming up for a junior in high school, my 11th grade year. The assault did happen my sophomore summer. They explained that they could not pull me out of those classes until I had a legitimate reason why. I had to, of course, tell my parents, and they went along with me to the school and made sure that I was pulled out of those classes. But as I was still in those classes, I did get bullied. I also informed my teacher, and she made a new seating chart and moved me to where I would no longer have paper thrown at me. After that, they allowed me to go down to the guidance officer or the guidance counselor and told me that they could switch me out of classes, but it would take 3 months. One evening after school let out, there's a senior parking lot and a junior parking lot at Christiansburg High School. A few classmates had found out and heard that I was sexually assaulted, and not from me. I kept quiet for 3 months after the situation had happened, and told my mom after those 3 months, and I dealt with this 3 months by myself. And as a victim, it was hard to come out to my mom and my dad and tell them that it had happened to me. And after my classmates found out that it happened from his friends, because he was he had no right to be telling people what had happened, but he did, and made me look bad, even though I was the victim. I was no longer allowed to go to any event, meaning whether that was prom, whether that was homecoming, a sporting event like a football game or a volleyball game. I quit volleyball because I wasn't allowed to play. But then Jeb Dodson was still allowed to play on the baseball team, was not taken out of any games. And for me, that was the one thing I asked, was if there's any other victim out there and they do come forward and do take them to court, and even if they don't, if they have any situation that they're involved in, if they're getting bullied, that it's not them that's getting pulled from their classes. It should be the one that's causing the problems, the bullies, the rapists. It doesn't matter. They should be the ones getting pulled out of the classrooms, out of the sporting events. It shouldn't come back on us. Polly allowed me to come to his office and speak with him, and allowed me to switch over to Auburn High School. And that was the best year of my life. Didn't have any trouble there.
Next person, Alicia Vaughn. Ma'am, you'll have 4 minutes if you'll give us your address.
My name's Alicia Vaught. I live in Christiansburg, Virginia, and I would like to present the words of Sarah Guthrie, She Becomes Unsilenced. Thank you. My name is Sarah Guthrie. I'm a parent of a 7th grader at Christiansburg Middle School, and I'm here to express my severe concern about bullying and the lack of discipline for those who are doing the bullying. Since the beginning of my daughter's 6th grade year, she has been tortured, put into lockers, trash cans, her hair cut, gum put in her hair, text messages and videos sent asking her to kill herself. And the school's answer to all of that was a piece of paper with a no contact order. Even in contacting the local authorities was how I got the no contact order at school for my daughter's bully. Bullying in Christiansburg seems baffling to me, as there are 7 administrators at Christiansburg Middle School, but yet day in and day out kids get broken bones and absolutely tortured in that school. I do not understand what all the administrators are for if our children can't even be protected in our schools. We send our kids to school to learn, but yet they have no rules. They have no laws to live by, especially since COVID. Kids can come and go and do whatever they want, say whatever they want to teachers and staff alike, and they have no consequences. My daughter has had to repeat summer school this year because she missed so much school because she just refused to go to school. The bullying was so bad. And the only thing that I ever was told by the administrators, my favorite one was, well, he's a boy, and if he didn't like her, he wouldn't pick on her. I'm sorry. That's not true, and that's not fair. I find that kids who are bullies at this age grow up to commit unspeakable acts as adults, and it's unacceptable. I think that there needs to be harsher punishment for kids who are bullying. I don't think the answer is for my daughter to get ISS when she's being bullied, and that was for her protection. The bully should be removed. Removing my child from the classroom was not the answer in my thought. I think that, it starts with our school board, which I'm very displeased with, like I think a lot of people in Montgomery County are. And it goes down to our administrators. They're just not willing to face the people who are acting out. They want to attack those who are being attacked even more. What can they do better? I was told, well, your daughter, she started crying. Of course she started crying. They put gum in her hair and chopped a chunk of her hair out. Her hair was 19 inches long, and now it's 8 inches long. My thoughts is that the bullies need to be punished in the school. There needs to be some kind of consequences for their actions. Teaching kids that there are no consequences for their actions. Not allowing kids to come to teachers and feel safe, and kids feeling like the teachers don't believe them or aren't there to help them is not the answer either. Growing up, I had great teachers who I could go to who would pray with me. We can't pray school anymore. That's one of the things my daughter's bullied about. She prays before lunch. I think that my child should have the right to bow her head and pray before she consumes her food without being attacked for praying. I think that the administrator that gave her lunch detention for that should not have given her lunch detention. She wasn't harming anybody. She was simply saying a prayer before she ate her peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and she got detention because it upset another student. Where do our kids' rights come in? Why do we have to protect the masses and say, well, not everyone likes it, so you have to conform? Why should my child have to change?
Next up, I have a Jenny Perfader. My apologies if I mispronounced that. If you'll state your name, address, you'll have 4 minutes. The yellow light will be the 1-minute warning.
Okay. My name is Jenny Perfader. I live in Blacksburg, and I'm here to present the Perfader 1 video. My name is Jenny Perfader. I have been an educator in a rural community outside of Montgomery County for about 8 years. I spent 7 years as a math teacher in 6th grade, and I spent 1 year as a 4th grade math teacher. And I became an educator because I absolutely love children and I wanted to make a difference in the world. I quickly realized early on in my education at Radford University that that was going to be a little bit more difficult than I realized, because we were taught about separation of church and state, and I realized that I wasn't going to be able to make the difference that I wanted to make in children's lives. I was raised in a home where we didn't talk about God. I was in a poor family. There was a lot of poverty, and I knew that the answer to a lot of those things that I struggled with was Jesus, and I wasn't going to be able to share that with my students. And so I struggled, but I listened to the reasoning of my professors, and I believed at the time that this is what we had to do, that we had to create an environment where everyone was welcome, and we couldn't talk about God, and we had to only teach, I had to focus on one thing, and that was educating, and that was academics. And what I've realized and what I've come to learn over the years is just like with adults, children have a soul, they have a mind, they have a body, they need nourishment of all sorts. And schools are just focusing on one aspect of that, and that is academics. And we're failing our students because we're not giving them the opportunity to know Christ. We're not giving them the opportunity to have another answer. And whenever you create a void like that, something's going to come in and fill that void. And the LGBTQ community has come in and filled that void. So many of our students are lost, just like many adolescents are, like many children are, and they're being told that this is the answer to their problems, that they can change their gender and that will provide them fulfillment. They can explore things sexually and that will provide them fulfillment. And that's a dangerous place for us to be as a society. It's a dangerous place for us to be in the classroom. I remember when I was in high school, bathrooms were the unsafe place already. They were hiding drugs in the ceiling tiles and making drug deals in the bathrooms and, sneaking in there with their boyfriends and girlfriends then. And now, with model policies for transgender students, we're allowing it. And not only are we allowing it, but we're saying you can't stop this. If you're a teacher and you see a child going to the bathroom, then you can't stop them. It doesn't matter if the child, they could be fluid gender, they could identify as they, them, and go to one bathroom or the other throughout the day as they're choosing, and you can't even question it. Think about the implications of this at the high school level. It's scary, it's worrisome. I have a daughter who's going into 11th grade. She is no longer dressing out in the locker rooms because there's a child in the locker room with her, and instead of dealing with this and saying you can't be in the locker room, then the answer is no one dresses out for gym, no one does anything. And so everyone is being impacted, everyone in the classroom, everyone in the school setting is being impacted by these policies.
Next up, Kim Bowman. Ms. Bowman, if you'll state your address, you'll have 4 minutes. The yellow light will give you the 1-minute warning sign.
Thank you. My name is Kim Bowman, and I live in Christiansburg, and I'm presenting the second part of Jenny Perfader's video.
And I started working in this rural community because I didn't want my child impacted by these policies, by these transgender ideologies and these policies that are coming forward. So I have to, made the decision to have her in a more rural setting, in a more conservative area, because I thought it wouldn't reach us. But I'm starting to see that it has. She shared 2 experiences with me this year, particularly. The first day of school, she was asked if what her pronouns were. Did she identify as a male or female, and what she wanted to be called, what her name was, what she wanted her name to be in the classroom. And the last few weeks of school, on an Algebra 2 test, the teacher wrote a question about 10 men in a drag queen competition, and wanted to know how many different ways they could get first, second, and third place. And this is concerning for me because I made these decisions thinking that this was the best for my child, and it's just slowly seeping in. And we've created this godless environment of these schools, and they are absolutely filling it with godless things. And we have to do better. We have to educate our children. We have to teach them right from wrong. We have to educate the whole child and not just part of the child. I want to share one thing with you, particularly as you guys know, this is Pride Month, and I'm being bombarded as a teacher right now with all kinds of information. Particularly one was a video, and it was by a group called Queer Kid Stuff. It was sent to me through Teacher Pay Teacher, and it was 5 tips for educators to make a more LGBTQ inclusive classroom. I want to tell you that this is on kids' YouTube. It's not even adult YouTube. They can access it, and they have a ton of children's content for this matter. And I want to share with you the 5 tips that they recommend for teachers. The first one is say friends or pals. Do not use boy or girl gender, and use gender-neutral terms in the classroom. The other one is don't assume that your kids have a mom and a dad. They may have 2 moms, 2 dads, or have transgender parents. The third one, and this is one I actually agree with, it says don't be afraid to answer students' questions about gender, because an unanswered question leads to confusion. And that is absolutely true. We have this block in our education system where we can't answer hard questions to our students because it's seen as taboo to talk about God, and they are filling that information with gender ideology, and it's not a good place to be.
Next up, I have a Deetra Journey. If you will state your address, and you'll have 4 minutes. When the light starts blinking yellow, you have a 1-minute warning.
Okay, thank you. My name is Deidre Reynolds Journey, and I live in Christiansburg, Virginia, and I would like to present part 3 of Jenny Perfader's video.
Number 4, keep a well-stocked library, and they even recommend 3 books. One is Call Me a Treat. We can only assume what that's about. Red is a story about a crayon who's a little bit different than all the other crayons. And then A for activist. And then it says you should tell your students your pronouns and then ask for their pronouns. And there's two women sitting at a desk, and there's a puppet in between them, and the puppet asks them what their pronouns are. And the woman says that she is a gay black woman. And this is happening in our schools, even our rural communities where we think we're safe. When policies are made at the state level, it stretches out and it's ongoing for the entire state. And then they tie funds to this. And so the school system is accepting these things. They are pushing these ideas, and they're not stopping it. They're not protecting our children like they should. They're not putting their foot down like they should, and they're allowing things to happen for funding reasons. And they're not for the protection of our students and not for the protection of our kids. And we absolutely need to stand against this. I think all of us have experienced childhood questions and growing into adolescence and wondering who we are and what we're going to do with ourselves and what we're going to be. And I think those are normal questions. We can't allow the answer to that to be to explore yourself sexually, because that is not going to lead to anything good with our students. We have to stop believing that falsehood of separation of church and state. Our Constitution and our country was not built on separation of church and state. It is a falsehood, and we have got to correct it. There are a lot of issues in our classrooms facing education, including issues with students with disabilities, issues with funding and how that's handled, everything from YouTube to discipline to bathroom issues to Google Chromebooks. There's so many issues that are brought into our classroom that are causing just havoc on our students and the ability to teach. Since COVID, the classroom dynamic has completely changed. You have students you had a heavy population of students that were middle of the road before, and then you had your few exceptional learners that would learn really quickly, and then you had a few students that were labeled as having a disability or being a slow learner, and you were able to manage that. But now everything has flipped around, and that's not how things are anymore. Since COVID, we have an extremely high number of students in the classroom that are 3 and 4 years behind grade level, and we're not able to meet all the students' needs. It's impossible. And teachers are expected to do too much with too little, and there's plenty of funding out there that's not being used adequately. There's so much governmental oversight in education that we can't use the resources that are needed for things that are needed. For example, the textbooks that we use and we've used for a long time often get thrown in the trash because they're not very adequate. However, we have a leaking roof, so we're spending thousands of dollars on textbooks while our infrastructure is falling down around us, and we have trash cans lined up in the hallway catching leaky roof systems. Anytime, I'm sure you guys have had experience with the government and all of the red tape that's involved with governmental funding, and we have to jump through these hoops, and it just doesn't make sense how we're spending our money.
Next up, I have Joanne Price. Ms. Price, if you'll state your address, and you'll have 4 minutes, and when the light starts blinking yellow, that's your 1-minute warning.
Thank you. I'm Joanne Price, Blacksburg, Virginia, and I'm here to introduce Perfader 4th video.
I have 2 solutions that I've come up with for education and ways that we can make a difference. One would be to completely overhaul the current system that we have and just get completely new people in there, completely new ideas in there, and really we allow people to opt out of everything. Students can write a letter to opt out of gym if they don't feel well for the week. They can write a letter to opt out of all kinds of things. So this whole melting pot idea doesn't even make sense. If you want to opt your child out of Bible education or anything like that, send a letter and opt them out of it, but it should be an option. It should be a choice. They should have the right to be able to learn about God if they choose. Now, that's not saying we can't invite, a Jewish a leader in there if there's Jewish people in the school or a Muslim or whatever. And you choose where your child goes, or your child is an atheist, they just go to the library and read, or they go to the gym and shoot basketball or whatever during this time. But ultimately, the better choice that I think is available to our students is, I heard this morning on the radio actually that students, it's about $15,000 average nationwide that each student gets total for resources to teach that child. Imagine if that money could be spent on school choice and allowing people to choose where they want to send their children. And I know this, is taboo, and we've been taught and really conditioned in the education system that this could not work, that it would not work. But what we're doing right now isn't working. So we've got to change something else. We've got to allow kids to be educated where their parents want them to be educated. It's not our job as educators to decide what a kid can learn, is exposed to. It's the parents' job. It's the parents' job. They need to have resources. They need to know clearly. There's all this muckiness and muddiness in public education, and we need to clear the water. We need to be transparent. We need to tell parents what's going on. We need to tell parents what is happening, and we need to protect these kids. And right now, we're not doing it. So I say the best option right now is for school choice, and to allow the money to follow the student. And we could do so much with that without that governmental oversight of this has to go here, this has to go there, you have to use this for this or whatever. And I've heard a lot of different ideas of how that could work. One of the ways that I love is, we have churches sitting open 6 days a week. Let's open those churches. A lot of those churches have classrooms already built in them because they have a Sunday school program where they educate children while their parents are in the main service. So we have the infrastructure there. We have people willing, a ton of people in education who are completely fed up, who are willing. And they're the silent majority. They're not talking about it. They'll talk to me about it because they know, because I'm very open, I'm very honest with how I feel. But they're also scared because we have big organizations like the Virginia Education Association, the NEA, the National Education Association, and each one of those has branches off of those associations, and they're scared. They're scared of the repercussions from their friends, their social group, of if they speak out, what's going to happen. And fear is not going to get us anywhere. We have to start talking about this, and we have to be making changes for our kids.
Order, please. Next up, I have Meredith Hutton. Ms. Hutton, if you will state your address, you'll have 4 minutes.
Good evening, I'm Meredith Hutton, and I live in Christiansburg. And today you've all talked extensively about educational funding as it relates to public schools. So today I just wanted to address you regarding school choice through the support of school vouchers, as Glenn Youngkin, governor, has spoken about school choice since he has been elected. I'm a former public school teacher of 16 years. I've worked in states where where school choice was an option and students got vouchers. I've also taught in Virginia where school choice has really not been a viable option, at least supported financially through public funds. I've also ventured into homeschooling for 4 years, and my students are currently enrolled in a private school. So we have encountered all school choices with the exception of boarding school, which I occasionally remind my kids that is still on the table, right? I am grateful to have experienced all these educational choices, particularly as an educator, because I have learned that education is not a one-size-fits-all opportunity for students. Each educational model that I have personally experienced has had its benefits and its challenges. Decisions made to homeschool or private school or to remove from public school isn't always just because we're pointing out failures of a particular educational model. There's more to it. There's family needs, individual child needs, and also a parent's educational philosophy. There's a myriad of philosophies out there on how to educate children. And I just think that as we're talking about this and we hear a lot of rhetoric about equity and accessibility for education. Is it really fair to say in the state of Virginia that children that only choose the government-chosen educational path will receive the financial benefit, right? If we're all paying tax dollars, cannot the money follow the child? Is that not making more educational opportunities accessible and at times equitable for all the students? So I just want to thank you for considering the importance of school choice by considering putting funds behind school choice. So thank you so much.
That concludes the list, but if anyone would like to come forward, you have 4 minutes to address the board. If you would state your name and address. Oh, we got several coming up.
Don't start the clock yet, please. My name is Sue Cass. I am a resident of Blacksburg. I'm also the chair of the Montgomery County School Board, and I apologize for my attire, but I'm on vacation, and I left my vacation because I was told that no one from the school board showed up this evening for this meeting when no one told us that we were needed here. Annie Whitaker, Dr. Whitaker, is on vacation this week, and she's on a very much needed vacation. I was told by another board member who messaged me earlier that there's a discussion regarding the appropriation. There was a lot of negative commentary about no one from the school board being here. My understanding is that Dr. Whitaker was speaking to Mr. Meadows today, and he said, "I'll see you tonight," and she did not know that she was required to be here this evening. She's on vacation. She was not told she had to be here or that any of us had to be here. And I don't appreciate that everyone has sat here as though no one cares on the school board about what's going on because we weren't here this evening. I just drove in from Cleveland. I just got in an hour ago before I got here. I was listening to this in my car on the way down from visiting my daughter over the weekend. Penny is away on vacation too. None of us knew we had to be here this evening. So I think that your remarks were kind of hurtful and also not well informed. And I also think that, Chair Blevins, if you would like to have conversation about things and you have questions, you need to let us know in advance. You should ask, in the whole spirit of working together as a community, in the spirit of our school board working along with the Board of Supervisors, I don't think by having a meeting and then all of a sudden having all of these questions, which you easily could have sent an email to me, an email to Dr. Whitaker, or you could have sent one to Ms. Franklin, to anyone, to ask these questions ahead of time, so that we could be prepared to be here to answer your questions. We were here the last meeting. We tried to explain and give you as much information as we possibly could. So it is not helpful if you don't give us that information. As far as what's happening here this evening, I'm sorry. I was a school teacher and for 11 years in this county, and I'm proud of that time that I was a school teacher. And I hear what some of these teachers are saying, but there's 2 teachers that are speaking for the hundreds and hundreds of people who have worked in the Montgomery County school systems. We work hard, and our teachers are dedicated, and they work so hard on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that you're sitting here and letting people disparage teachers and disparage our schools, just a couple of people are having these conversations. Everyone is working hard to support our students. And I think that the way you are allowed to provide this information is very one-sided and very political. And it seems to me as though some people have some political aspirations. I hear a lot of commentary here that has nothing to do with helping our schools, but it has to do with church and state and religion. And now I know my 4 minutes is up. Maybe I wish I had a clone of myself so I could do what the rest of the people did and had another person come up for 4 minutes and another person come up for 4 minutes and another person come up for 4 minutes, but I don't. And I'm going to go back home to finish my vacation and to have my dinner that I left sitting there because I jumped up out of my chair to come down here to speak to you. I hope that we can work together, Chair Blevins, and the rest of the chair and the rest of the board. And I hope we can maybe finally get the meeting together that we were supposed to have so we can work together to support our community, not work against each other, because that's the sense we're getting right now. Dr. Whitaker has done everything she can. And if you want to blame people for some mistakes, you are blaming the wrong ones. Blame the previous people. Why do you think we are in the place we are in right now? The previous people put us here. And if you want to talk, ask them. Ask them, especially the one that is talking about running for the school board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to come forward, you have 4 minutes if you'll state your name and address.
I'm Betty Coleman, and I live in Blacksburg. And I was given this today. This is an ad for a Thursday night Pride drag show in Blacksburg. So I want all of you to realize that the drag queens are here. These are from Floyd, and they have story hour in Floyd. And if you think they're not going to have it in Blacksburg, you better look again. And some of the books, the story hours are for all the ages. These were 2 to 7 that I actually looked at. And the books were My Princess Boy, William's Doll, and Julian is a Mermaid. And if those books don't have some kind of effect on little children, I don't know what would. But as a grandparent, I don't want my tax money going to support any of this stuff. Look at that. Look at that.
Order, please.
This is going to be June the 30th at the Milk Parlor on Draper Road in Blacksburg. This is horrible. Thank you.
If anyone else would like to come forward to address the board, if you'll state your name and address, you'll have 4 minutes. When the light starts blinking yellow, that's your 1-minute warning.
Good evening. How y'all doing? My name is Johnny Ashley. I live at 2675 Glade Drive, and I'm here to speak about the family court reform and the law enforcement response to crimes committed there. This will be our 14th time meeting. A lot has happened since last time I was here. On Friday, Roe v. Wade was overturned. And since then, my Facebook feed has been full of females giving their opinion about this. And even some of the most right-wing females I know are pretty mad about it. One of the things they're mad about is director privacy, where they shouldn't have to explain their medical, they shouldn't have to explain why they want a certain medical procedure to a government bureaucrat. And while I fully understand why they are mad, I hope they are enjoying their free trial of being a man. Family court isn't biased in favor of women, it's biased against men. Ladies, you're mad about having your privacy invaded once. After my son's mom abandoned him with some distant relatives, that began 10 years of having my privacy invaded by government bureaucrats and being cross-examined by lawyers. That's why in a 2003 study by University of Riverside professor Augustine Caropsa, he found that divorced men kill themselves at a rate 860% higher than single men. By default, if you are divorced, you've gone through family court. His study was using numbers from 1979 to 1989, but between 2000 and 2020, the suicide rate rose 30%. That would make Professor Augustine's 860% 1,146%. And that's skipping the 90s. In 1999, suicide became the leading cause of death in America. I'll ask again, does New River Valley Community Services receive payments per suicide that happens in their district? And that brings us to our next current event, the shooting in Uvalde, Texas. And before I start, I know in my heart that our sheriff sleeps listening to his radio. He dreams about what his cops are doing. And if that happened here, he would have been the cop there in 3 minutes. And regardless if it was his day off and he was wearing gym shorts and flip-flops, the terminating with extreme prejudice would have began immediately. He was in both Iraq wars and Afghanistan. He's a badass. He's our local RoboCop. And that's good because we know our children will not end up trapped in the classroom with the madman. I bet there are a lot of people who found out the hard way that Sheriff Parton does not negotiate with terrorists. I just wish he would use some of that same energy that he used to protect us from foreign enemies and protect us from domestic ones. Just like how the children in Uvalde called 911 and begged for help, and while the police fought their parents in the parking lot. I have begged you and him for help, but metaphorically, you have all been fighting me in the parking lot instead. Just to make the point, multiple times I had asked him to come down here and state his unwritten policy on family court, and every time he didn't. More and more I stopped seeing him as a hero and realized he was just another shady politician who can't publicly state what he's doing behind the scenes. Next time you see me, I'm going to have paperwork for you, and we're going to use these 4 minutes to start breaking down each one of these cases. Dr. Lehman has written multiple books on school shooters. In 2018, he wrote that 25 of the most cited school shooters since Columbine, 75% of them came from broken homes. End family court tyranny, stop school shootings, and stop blaming guns. Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Would anyone else like to come forward to address the board? Sir, you'll have 4 minutes if you'll state your name and address.
Sure. My name's Jeff Aronkoff, 3320 Elk Creek Drive, Christiansburg. I hadn't planned to speak tonight, but since the opportunity is there, I just wanted to just make a few comments. So the fact that Governor Youngkin is allowing us to consider school vouchers and school choice, there are many people here that have come to support that position. They're not all here to speak, but many people that are here in the audience are here for that reason. So it is a very pressing point on many hearts of people across this great state. And we feel that as we spend our hard-earned money on for taxes for the schools, that we need to have the proper representation. And with all the things that are creeping into the schools that have gone far beyond the simple, reading, writing, and arithmetic, the basics, why we send our kids to school is to learn to be educated. And there's too many other things that have creeped in. And it's now causing parents to pause. I moved down here in 1993 from Long Island, New York, because I wanted my kids to be able to be exposed to a more healthy, cleaner in thought environment. And I got that. That was in 93. Thrilled with what I saw in this county. Thrilled that my kids could participate in school, have the music programs. They could sing worshipful songs if as part of a music quality of music, not for the purpose of a religious experience, but because of the quality of music that was presented there. I was thrilled that there was a freedom to do that, as well as a freedom to sing other types of songs and things like that. But over the years, over the 27 years that I've been here, there's been a slow fade of moral decline. And you know that. You've seen it. But we're afraid to speak about it. We're afraid to admit it. And we're afraid to come up against it. And so we think turning the other cheek is a solution to everything. And it isn't. There's a point where you have to stand up, have a backbone, and stand against these unrighteous things that are sleeping. And what is sneaking? What is unrighteousness? Right doing. You know what the right things are to do. The school board should know what the right thing to do is, but they seem to have lost their moral compass. So parents are here raising a hand saying, please find the moral compass again for our children, for our grandchildren, because we're slipping away at a rate that is like the frog in the water that's heating up. And before you know it, things are going to be dead. And so that's why so many people are here for that purpose. So please consider it. Give us a choice. Either revamp things totally or give us choice. Because if we don't get the choice, we're going to have to somehow find a way to seize it. We don't want to do that. Don't force the hand of people to have to seize something that we are gladly submitting our money to do, but we don't want to have to now put our money towards things to protect us from those who are supposed to be protecting and helping us. We don't want to do that. So thank you for the time.
Order, please. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? Please come forward, state your name and address, and you'll have 4 minutes. And when the yellow light starts blinking, that's your 1 minute warning.
Good evening, board. Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Joel Byoff, and I'm a resident of Christiansburg, actually Montgomery County, outside the city. Now, I did not I had one son, and I had the ability to send him to private school. I am not against the public school system. As a matter of fact, on behalf of the way our culture is, I feel horrible with what teachers are presented with, our public school teachers are presented with the breakup of the family, the lack of discipline that's in the home, and then we send our kids to the public school system to try to fix it. I am not against public education by any means, and I have many friends that are public school teachers. So I don't want to be disparaging the public school system, but I am indeed for school vouchers, and I am indeed for school choice. And I also agree with Ms. Cass that school teachers do work very hard, and they're presented with impossible situations in many cases. But our families are really, really hurting. Fatherlessness in the home has created a real problem. It's created a social problem that we don't want to talk about. School choice and vouchers the time has come for that. And if it means that the public school system has some type of competition to move it along, to present a product that parents are happy with, and the funds need to go into private schools, parochial schools, if it does what it takes to make our communities better by making the public school system better, that's indeed what I think we need to do. I sent my son to Christian school in K through 12. I am happy with the product that I got there, and I did have the means at least to be able to do that. Not everybody does. But I think school choice is something that could work, and it does not mean I'm against public education. And I just wish that not only Montgomery County, Virginia, but nationwide, that creating a situation where there's competition would create a better product for all our children. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and have a good evening, everybody.
Order, please. Anyone else would like to come forward? You have 4 minutes to address the board. If you'll state your name and address, you'll have 4 minutes to speak.
Terry St. Clair, Christiansburg, Virginia. I'm here tonight also about the vouchers. I wasn't planning on speaking. I don't do that. But my boy goes to private school. He's 9 years old. And I chose private schools because of the stuff that's being taught in public schools that should not be taught. And I know there's a lot of good teachers, a lot of good workers in the public school systems, but they're forced to teach stuff that they don't agree with, that's against their beliefs. But my boy goes to private school over in Auburn, and I know he's loved, I know he's safe, I don't have to worry about him. But if he's in public schools, I would worry every day, and it shouldn't be like that. We need to revamp our public schools and see what's being taught. This transgender stuff like that is horrible, should not be taught to a 7-year-old, a 12-year-old, an 18-year-old. But my boy, I would homeschool him before I'd ever send him to public schools if they do not change what they're doing. And I would greatly appreciate y'all think about these vouchers for people who want to send their kids to other schools because they don't agree with what's going on in these public school systems. Thank you.
Order, please. Would anyone else like to come forward? You have 4 minutes to address the board. If you'll state your name and address, you'll have 4 minutes, sir.
Bob Barbetti Reiner. First of all, I want to apologize for interrupting your discussion. It's my mistake. The information I wanted to share, remind you of, was, the best of my recollection, Interim Superintendent Whitaker indicated at the last meeting that her intent was to issue contracts with current salary levels until the budget situation was resolved. And at that point, they would make adjustments according to whatever the resolution was. Really have nothing else to say. And I just thought that perhaps your discussion was partially generated by the concern for the teachers, which we all have, and that she's already made provision. You need not worry. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to come forward and address the board? Seeing no one come forward, we will close public address. And at this time, we will take a 10-minute break. Guys, we'll go back into our meeting. Next up, addendum. Do we have an addendum?
I'm sorry, I was looking at another question. No, ma'am, we do not have an addendum this evening.
Works into work session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Up first, we have Montgomery County Sheriff, School Resource Officers. And I do believe we have the Honorable Sheriff Parton approaching.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Meadows, members of the board. Thank you for giving me a few minutes. I kind of don't know where to start. I don't want to bore you all after such an exciting evening, but I am here about an important topic, and you all have been gracious enough to help me, help the sheriff's office, help our community, and help all our schools and all of our different strands over the years. So just a quick breakdown for your memory jogging. In 2000, an SRO was added to each county high school. So at that point, there were 4. 2004, an SRO was added to each county middle school. In 2018, I came before you when several folks were telling me, why are you going to do that? There's no need. I came before you to tell you that we had 4 elementary schools, which were the softest targets in our county, and told you that I would like to put an SRO in each elementary school. At that point, you added an SRO, and we were able to split time with that SRO between the new school on Price's Fork and Bellevue. In 2019, I was back. Once again, you helped out. An additional SRO was added to Eastern Montgomery Elementary School. That was extremely important because if you remember back, we talked a lot about how far away Eastern Montgomery was. So we can't be everywhere all the time, and that was extremely important, especially because the elementary school sits a good distance across a big field from the high school, and it's separated by fences. But we took care of that at that time. What I'm here tonight for is to request 2 more SROs, and I hope you have the cost sheet in front of you. That cost sheet lays out exactly what it cost us for a full-time deputy, and if you notice the salary, that is based on conversations that I've had with Mr. Magruder, and that's what we expect that salary to be. The benefits package is then added on to it, and you see the total there is $67,609. Of course, we would multiply that by 2 for 2 full-time SROs. Then we get to the vehicles, which we'll need 2 of those, but I am not here to discuss that with you. I don't want to scare you all away, so Mr. Magruder, as always, is there working with us, and we're going to talk about the 2 vehicles when it's carryover time. And I realize I'm coming at you guys in an off-budget time, and I'm sorry about that. But if we can find a way to do it, to start them in September would just be, or actually in August. School's good. I'm thinking back to when I was in school. In August, that would be fabulous. And I can take any questions that you may have. One thing is that will complete all of the schools in the county, of which there are 8. That will finish them out and allow us not to have one left unattended with the one SRO who's flip-flopping back and forth.
Okay, we will go around the room, and if anybody has any questions or comments, we'll start off with Supervisor Fidzikowski.
Excuse me. I don't really have any questions. I think we've been down this road before and pretty much understand it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Supervisor King.
Don't have no questions. You answered one. Would that put officers in all schools?
That will take care of every school in the county. In the county.
Not in the towns.
Right. Oh, yeah. But the towns are still taking care of them schools, right?
The towns are taking care of themselves. They have SROs, but I could not tell you whether there's one in every school.
Just one more question. This be for Craig. Can we move forward with this tonight? So he'll be ready to go?
I'm looking over at Angie because she's our money person.
We can do that tonight. We know the amount for 2 officers. The total estimated cost is $67,000 per each position with the new comp plan and our estimated fringe amount. So that would be $134,000 for the positions.
And
135, 218.
Okay. I got a text from Mark and it was rounded.
And you got your number directly from Mark, I'm sure.
I was actually asking for 150, and the reason for that is the total was 144, 806.60. It's actually 66, but I didn't want to write 3 6s down in a row.
Thank you.
Sheriff, if I can add to what Angie just said too, there may be some opportunities for grants as well that I know we've had some discussion internally about looking at applying for as well.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a competitive grant, so we would have to see if we
So-
qualified and received the grant. But if you wanted to move forward tonight, we could appropriate that
Yes.
out of fund balance or contingency.
Yes, and I wasn't saying that in lieu of, I'm just saying there might be another opportunity.
Just a couple things, if you'll allow me another minute and a half.
Certainly.
So from the Attorney General's office and DCJS, yes, there are grant possibilities now. And the beauty of those is they're not matched, so you don't have to put any money up front. The bad news is the chances of us receiving that grant are minimal. Those grants almost always go to smaller, more rural areas with a much smaller tax base, or to, since we're blessed with a low crime rate, to areas where their crime rate is much higher. The funding is also on a 4-year cycle, which means we would have to advertise for a grant position. We can hardly hire now for full-time positions where they don't have to worry about keeping their jobs. And the match is not guaranteed. It can turn into a match the next year. It's just guaranteed for FY '23.
And the deadline is July 15th.
The deadline is July 15, but, you know, between Brian and Mark, our 2 experts, that would not be an issue. But I got to tell you, I really don't see us being a recipient.
Okay. Supervisor DeMonts.
Good evening, Sheriff Harton. I've got a couple of logistical questions for
Sure.
you. And I'll go back to previous discussions that we had. Overall, I'm very supportive of the idea and the concept, so I don't want you to feel like I'm asking these questions because I don't support you, because I think several years ago I wanted this for all of the schools, and I know we've put it together to get there. Do we already have people that we would fill these positions with, or would these be new recruits that we have to send through the academy?
No. So if it were someone we had to send through school, it would be an SRO school. we would never, I would never put a new recruit in a school as an SRO.
I appreciate that.
It always, for me, would be an experienced deputy who has time on the road and has time dealing with all the different scenarios that we have to deal with.
I like that. I like your perspective on that. That leads to another question that I think you may have already answered. It sounds like these are pretty desirable positions within your office, so trouble filling them from what, from your existing experienced deputies might be.
You know, years ago, the old adage was, you know, that's where officers would go to pasture. It wasn't true then, and it's even more so not true now. You know, it's not unusual for us to have someone who's on our SWAT team as an SRO.
I think that's great. What do you do for training, for continuing training? And I am asking that from I'm not a police officer and never have been. So are there training sessions where we would pull all of the SROs out of school for certain periods of time? Do they do them during the summer?
Yes. So the SROs accomplish a lot of their mandatory stuff during the summer, as well as performing numerous functions for the sheriff's office. I can't even describe to you what everything they do. They cover for everyone else's vacations, basically, because they're all sworn deputies. So just like everybody else, they're required to maintain the 40 hours in service every 2 years, plus every other mandatory training that comes down the pike that we have to accomplish. Fortunately now, a lot of that is online, but there's a lot we can't do online. If we're training active shooter training, you know, that's not online. So we'll get everybody together and we'll just take over. We'll take over an elementary school in the middle of the night and just do what we do. But they have the same training as everyone else.
Okay. And then I know this is outside of your purview, and I'm asking you as a personal favor, if you could, I know the relationship between the two chiefs and yourself
Sure.
is generally pretty good. If you could maybe find out some information about what the towns are doing, just say that a board member has requested, do we have SROs in the two towns? Not because we would want to step in, but if I, for example, have an elementary school in my district that does not have an SRO, that gives me a point of advocacy to town council. If you could, if it comfortably comes up for you, I would love to know that information.
The chiefs and I have been talking about SROs ever since I was elected in 2016. More to the point, you all can do much more than I can. It's not the chiefs wanting SROs.
Okay.
It's where's this?
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. I know what you're getting at. I appreciate you being here and continuing to come forward with this for us, to give us continuing opportunities to discuss it and get us fully staffed in all of the schools.
Well,
So
I
thank you.
appreciate you all. You all never let me down.
Supervisor Bone.
There's always first time, I'm just saying. I'm kidding. So I have a question for Craig and Angie. I thought our budget was full up for ongoing money. Like, we didn't have any more ongoing money available.
We do.
We always have general contingencies that we could use for something like this.
I always interpreted that as one-time money, not as.
No, it's ongoing. Our general contingencies are ongoing. You can only use them once in this year, but then next year we would restore them.
Restore them
In the budget.
With growth or.
Right, okay. So I don't mean to be dumb, but why now? Could you tell us why you're coming to us
It's
now?
not just why now. It's not just now.
Mm-hmm.
That was a campaign promise I made to the county in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And in increments, with your help, we have been able to get to this point. Obviously now, because of Texas and because of Newtown and because of tech, I can't tell you how so many events have affected me and have affected our deputies. But what I can tell you is, and this is not Monday morning quarterbacking anyone or any agency. What I can tell you is with us, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or if it's 51. Somebody's going to be in that building. That somebody might be dead, but we're going to slow it down until the cavalry gets there.
So, why didn't we have this as part of the budget cycle?
During the budget cycle, there was no way I could ask for the SROs at that time because there were other things that we had to have at that time. The SROs I knew would be ongoing. I could have asked, but I don't think I would have gotten much traction. Just like I could ask you for the cars now, but I don't want to overwhelm anything or anyone when I think we can do that incrementally.
So another question for Craig and Angie. What's to prevent other constitutional offices from coming to us and asking for employees? I'm not criticizing you, Hank,
I understand.
by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to understand how this all works. Because we have, a handful of constitutional officers that really do
Understand.
want more employees.
Well, if the commissioner comes and asks you for SROs, I think we better look.
Commissioner of Revenue?
Just teasing.
They could come and ask. It would be your decision as the elected officials as to whether or not you wanted to fund those.
And how much money do we have in the general contingencies?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I don't know. I'll tell you in a minute. I'll find that and I'll tell you how much it is.
It's always 1%.
It's 1% of the general fund.
Yeah, and I was trying to run that number in my head too. I haven't looked. It's a good amount.
I mean, again, nothing against you, Hank, because I'm going to support this. But
I understand.
I think that it's really, really important for us to feel, encourage isn't really the right word, but I think some of the constitutional offices, don't feel like they would be as welcome here or something. I don't know what that is, but others wouldn't go outside of the regular budget cycle, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I just, want to understand what is not just allowed, but welcomed or.
I think the other constitutional offices are much more able to predict and ask for what they need during the budget cycle because things don't change for them like they change for us. And they change for us in a hurry. I just thought of one big reason why the ask wasn't there during the budget cycle. It's because our SWAT tactical vests were outdated. And we had to replace those, and they were incredibly expensive, like to the tune of $60,000 or $70,000. There were things that happened then that I had to ask for. I couldn't ask for SROs then.
And I understand enough about the budget cycle, how the constitutional officers and department heads get together and put in what everybody wants, and then we can't pay for it all, so we got to figure out how to do it. And basically, it's not increasing staff hardly ever. But if we have the money, then we should be able to increase staff to some extent in the other departments and constitutional offices.
We
I
did
guess.
add positions in the current year budget for some.
But it's like one or
offices.
two.
It was more than that this year, and I don't know the number of positions. The amount in contingencies is $583,000, just over $583,000. And just for a point of reference, at the end of the year of '22, we started with with 536 and ended with $332,000. That's why we don't have to replenish the whole amount every year.
So you're asking for approximately $145,000 out of the 580. Is that what I'm understanding?
150.
150,
150 out of the 580,
right.
which means, you know, do a little math here, 430 is left over.
That's correct.
Would we ever, how low would we ever go?
We have spent all of that in some lean years in the past. It's been a long time, but since I've been here, we have spent close to all of that.
Awesome. Couldn't thank you more for all the SROs that we do have in our schools, and I'm so glad that you're here to ask for these final SROs. Just to be crystal clear, in every school, meaning Bellevue and Price's Fork, are not sharing anymore?
Bellevue and Price's Fork will each have their own
Okay.
very special SRO.
Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you for your support.
Let's see, did I already ask Supervisor Fidzikowski? I did. Supervisor King and Vice Chair, Ms. Biggs.
Well, you don't have to ask me. You know how I feel about it. I'm
night.
passionate. I've always wanted this. I'm hoping that the two towns will get, you know, one SRO officer per school. It's really bothered me. And I got to see, when we had the DARE officer in our elementary school, the impact that that one individual made in our school with K through 5 and the relationships he developed with those children. You start then and it builds up through middle and high. And these folks are, at least the ones I encountered, are well-trained to do their job and interact with kids. I think it's critically important. I certainly support, you know, having all of our county schools covered. I feel the same as Ms. DeMotts, because I do have one elementary school in my district, and so I would hope that they're all covered. When you look at Blacksburg, if they're not all covered, and you're going from Harding Avenue to Kips, it takes a little while to get there. And we've all seen how fast things happen, and I'm just so thankful for the SRO officers that we have. And I'm going to encourage you, Hank, you know I'm going to say this, to apply for the grants anyway, because
Sure.
I sit on that Criminal Justice Service Board and we pass grant after grant after grant. And I will send you a list. I still have to send you the list of the ones that got it last time, and nobody's ever against them. They're
Sure.
like, yep, we'll pass.
There's no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
The grant process is ready to go, and Brian and
Yeah.
Mark can fire it up and get it out there.
Yeah, that'd be great. But I'm all for this, and I want to thank you for bringing it back. Sure. And bringing it back.
I will
until
do
it's-
anything I can
Yeah.
to help the towns. And on the bright spot, one thing about the towns is if they're sharing an SRO, they don't have far to travel. Once that call goes out, and not only them, but we will all be converging on that scene. But in the county, it's a little bit harder.
It's harder.
Because we are spread out.
Now, my only question is, like, when an SRO is sick or for some reason can't be in the school, do you rotate someone in?
We try, and we do a very good job of that. But I would be lying to you if I said every school day of every year is covered. Obviously, situations come up.
Right.
And there'll be a 3 or 4 hour block when they're not. But we try extremely hard, and with the two now, that will even ease that pain a little bit more. But the patrol shifts are very good, even our civil shifts. We stop in, we check on the schools, and if we know the SRO is not there, then those checks become more frequent.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Sheriff, you know I am a huge proponent,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
from 2013, when we had the issues at Fallen Branch Elementary School, I actually spoke in front of this board many times and the town of Christiansburg about the need not only for resource officers, but general security upgrades and improvement, and because of that advocating it, we got lots of improvements, and we're always can use more improvements. So I am totally supportive of this. One of the questions was, one of the supervisors asked, why now? Because of Texas, we don't want to look back and say, what could we have done? We want to do it now. And so with that, and of course, we just heard a lot of issues in the school systems with discipline, fighting, bullying. That would be great to make sure we have resource officers there to also help with the administration on any type of problems and things that might arise from those situations. And going back to the funding, we do have the special contingencies. We also have carryover money.
We do have I was going to bring that up, the special contingencies. I know that Michael's getting ready to make another presentation that we're going to earmark that for if you approved it. But we have $116,000 left in the special contingencies that was for the pay study. And then we could use rollover funds as well, but then we would need to restore those for the following year, which I feel like we would be able to do that.
And because this year we had $380,000 in new growth revenue, correct, from that special contingency. So we should be pretty good to set that. And this is such an important priority. And I have already reached out, of course, talking to the town of Christiansburg a little bit. I know that both the chiefs are very supportive of that. It boils down to their councils are put in the same position that we are. It comes down to funding. But I believe this board would be willing to help them grant whatever we can do to advocate for them to also fund to make sure that all of our children in all the schools are protected. That's that first line of defense. And as always, thank you so much for always putting your citizens first and the protection and public safety. And we appreciate everything you and your deputies do every day. And we greatly appreciate that. And I guess we're going to move that to new business. Is that a consensus? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all so much for all the support. We really appreciate you. And let me thank you for all the work on the pay compensation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate that too. We know that was a lot of work. Thank you all.
Up next, we have Michael Greery from the Department of Emergency Medical Services. Michael, you gonna hit us up too?
I am. Give me 1 second to pull this up here. What's that? No, she's not here tonight. I thought that this one might go long, so. But good evening, guys. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm here to present to you tonight an EMS update from our county agency as well as the ongoing EMS evaluation. So really quickly on our agency, you can see the call volume here. In the first 2 months of our 2 units being in service, we've run 251 calls along with our nighttime paramedic, who's actually sitting in the back here tonight, listening as well. The call volume speaks for itself. I know I'd sent you guys an update a few weeks ago about where we were with the first couple months of being in service. But what I can say is that in talking to our volunteers and talking to the citizens, they've seen the impact that this has had within our communities with keeping our second and third due agencies from responding 30 minutes in one direction to get down to where they need to go. This has been incredibly beneficial. And I can't thank you guys enough. I can't thank Elliston and Reiner enough for allowing us to be in their stations, to interact with their members. And they have formed great relationships to this point. And so I'm excited to see as we continue to grow how those relationships will continue to grow with them. So speaking on the EMS evaluation, this was implemented in March of this year before I got back. But the EMS evaluation is essentially in place to make sure that we are keeping our agencies to standards that have been endorsed by both the county and the Fire and Rescue Commission. So we have all come up with these standards of response and with acceptable staffing and patient care procedures to ensure that the citizens and visitors of the county are receiving the best possible patient care in a timely fashion. So this evaluation is something that we look at on an ongoing basis to
to see where our agencies are at, because it's something that can change from day to day based on staffing levels, based on how many volunteers each agency has. And so it's something that we look very closely into to make sure that our citizens are getting the best care that they can. So unfortunately, I'm here tonight presenting you a problem. It's something that we've pulled data from 6 months of last year and 6 months of this year to show to you. The problem persists down in the Shawsville-Elliston area of the county with the Shawsville Volunteer Rescue Squad. The numbers in front of you here show 6 months of data from December of 2020 through May of 2021 in comparison to December of 2021 through May of 2022. So you can see that dramatic difference between what they were doing a year ago versus where they're at now. And unfortunately, as volunteerism continues to decline, we've seen a decline with Shawsville particularly and with their nighttime coverage. We've addressed the daytime issues with our truck down there, and they're responding to all the calls during the day. Unfortunately, nighttime continues to be an issue. As you can see on there, about 1/3 of calls are being turned over to the mutual aid agencies, which would be Blacksburg and Christiansburg, if they have trucks available. So you're looking at least a 25 to 30-minute response to get to that area. So real quickly, I'll provide you a solution. Within the standards that we set through the EMS evaluation, it's determined that once an agency falls below 75% of answering their call volume for 2 consecutive quarters, that the county will take and intervene in the situation. This is our intervention. This is our solution, the most fiscally responsible solution that we could come up with to provide 24/7 EMS coverage within the Shawsville-Elliston area. You'll see the cost is roughly $212,000 for part-time staff to be down there for our 12-hour night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We already have money budgeted that would go towards our uniforms, towards training, any PPE. Really, the only money that we would require would be for those part-time salaries. And that is honestly all that I have to present to you. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. Supervisor King.
Part-time staff?
Yeah.
So we'd continue the same model that we have right now. We'd staff that ambulance with a paramedic and with at least an EMT. They would be part-time staff, and that wouldn't change our staffing levels at all. We'd probably have to hire roughly 8 more paramedics and then another 3 to 4 EMTs to cover those shifts.
So how long would that money last? 6 months?
That would last the entire year for that specific 12-hour shift.
That'd last 12 months?
Yes.
Well, one more thing. I do appreciate everything y'all doing. I've heard nothing but good.
I'm glad.
Thank you.
Our folks are credit to that. They've done a wonderful job.
Supervisor DeMonts.
Sorry about that. Good to see you this evening. Thank you for being here. And to the other members of your team, thank you all for being here as well. I know that all of your jobs are done with a sense of purpose and a sense of duty. I think the purpose and duty of this board is to enable you to do your jobs to the fullest of your abilities. You've shown us clear information that we have members of our community that might be suffering or struggling just due to lack of people, and you're requesting the people for it. So I don't have any objections to it. We knew going into this that this was going to be an expense that was an increasing expense, and it seems that you're approaching it by identifying the areas of critical need. And I appreciate your approach and support your request.
Thank you.
Supervisor Bone.
Do you have a picture of our new ambulance or no?
Let me go back a few slides here. I don't have a very clear picture, but you'll see in the smaller pictures down there, the
That
two
gray
trucks that we
one
have.
or the white one?
So it's the white ones in the pictures, and they have the same kind of patch design that I have on my shirt.
And we have one.
Two.
We have
So,
two,
yep.
okay.
One in Reiner and then one in Shawsville, Elliston.
Can you go to the percentage page?
Absolutely.
So when you say less than 75%, you're talking about that 65% over there. Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. How many volunteers are now paid staff?
I can't answer that off the top of my head. Brandon, Tyler, Patrick, who's back there, is actually a volunteer at Blacksburg Rescue. I'd say we have at least 10 paid staff that are also volunteers within the county.
Well, I guess maybe I'm not asking the question correctly. We were worried that the volunteers would leave volunteering and we would pay them. Not that it's a bad thing, but it just was a model that was concerning.
So we're very fortunate that a lot of our volunteers, prior to becoming employees of ours, volunteered and had full-time or part-time jobs elsewhere. The job that they do to make money doesn't get in the way of their volunteerism. We haven't had anybody that's left their volunteer
Perfect. Thank you.
squad to come
That's
work
what
for
I was
us.
wondering. Mhm. And then, not a question for you, or maybe a question for you. What's the story about soft billing? What's the next step for that?
Our next step is to do an RFP or get more information. Brad's planning to work with them on that in the near future.
We've had conversations with the town of Blacksburg. The town of Blacksburg's also looking at that as a possibility moving forward. So there is some discussions about working jointly with them on a proposal.
I guess my last question, getting back to this page, is if you have the, I'm going to be supporting this also, but does that mean the percentage is going to go back to in the 90s, if not 100%? I mean, I love the April number from 2 years ago, right? But
It'll always depend on the call volume, but I'd say we'd at least be covering 95% of the calls. If you look at the good year for Shawsville up there, the 94%, I'd say the 6% of those calls that weren't covered were likely second or third calls where their first team was already out assisting a patient. We'd be in the same situation where we'll have that first ambulance. However, if another call goes off, then we'd have to rely on either Shawsville to cover it or for mutual aid to come and backfill.
awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back.
Glad to be back.
Supervisor Fidzikowski.
Yeah, this is one of those programs that you like to talk about because it has been so successful in my area. Not just citizens that approach me or call me or email me telling me how great it is, but the volunteers themselves talking about the paid staff and how their relationship is so good. It's not really a question, is it, Michael? But I have to brag a little bit. It is really working out well, and we saw this coming. I've been in contact with Michael over this, and of course, in the Fire and Rescue Commission, we talk about it quite a bit. When the calls start trailing off like that, we have to take some kind of action, and we know what works now. And Michael, Brandon, and Tyler, I mean, they did an excellent job putting this thing together. Of course, I helped too. I think I bought coffee or something. No, this is such a great program, and you know, there's an additional benefit too, because of mutual aid. A lot of times, if our guys aren't busy, they're going to be going out to help Blacksburg or Christiansburg. Because if you've ever listened to a scanner, police scanner, rescue scanner, you just don't know when all heck is going to break out. There have been days where it's pouring down rain and you're thinking, oh man, these guys are going to be busy. May not get a call. Then the sun is out and it's like one right after the other. And then Christiansburg may have 2 or 3 units. All 3 of them get tied up. So now here comes Shawsville Elliston to help out. So it's really been a real blessing, and I can't brag on it enough. It just really is working out well. So yeah, this is the answer for sure.
Supervisor Fidjikowski, if I could add to that, one of the things I wanted to make clear in this discussion too is we're very hopeful that Shawsville Rescue will be able to continue to recruit volunteers and continue to respond to calls. This is in no way an attempt to put them to the side. As a matter of fact, if the call response increases from Shawsville Rescue, you just mentioned it gives us the ability to help other areas as needed. So I want to say that again. We've said that from the beginning. This has never been about trying to replace volunteers. We're hopeful that the volunteer system will continue to be strong. But right now, in this particular situation, we have a situation where our citizens, when they call, we must ensure that we respond.
And we've talked about how nationwide volunteers are kind of dropping off, but one of the things that this board is going to do in our capital plans is to put a new rescue squad down there, and we're really hoping that'll be a shot in the arm and maybe stir a little bit of volunteerism in the community, and maybe we'll have a big bounce back. So that's all the questions I have, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Vice Chair Biggs.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said here, and it's really been a good learning experience for us as board members to see the data and to know that, like I said a long time ago, it's all about the response time to our citizens. That's what we're responsible for. And to see the coverage, and I'm just so thankful for everything that you all have been able to do. I mean, it's something that was really a worry and a concern, and looks like we're, doing fairly well. So I'm very supportive of moving forward.
Mike, I don't have any questions other than to commend you, Brandon, and Tyler for what a wonderful program and successful program I have in the community, from prior patients and the volunteers, just the great relationship and hard work that you all are doing to build upon the community. So I'm very supportive of that. I know, 25 to 30 minutes response time, that could, that's not good. And so we definitely need the coverage. And I do believe this is not a shock to any of the board members. We knew it would be coming. And again, we're in hopes that our volunteerism, it's a national shortage again. It's not just in the Shawsville area, it's nationwide of a shortage of volunteers. So we are greatly appreciate that we are able to provide this service, quality service for our citizens. And again, just positive feedback, and you guys are doing a great job, so it'd be very supportive. And I guess the next thing would be if the board would want to move forward with that tonight as well.
Yep. We actually don't need a resolution tonight. We can bring that to you at the next meeting, but your consensus will allow them to go ahead and advertise and start getting people onboarded. I believe Michael said that if he got that tonight, hopefully by August 1st, the coverage could begin.
Absolutely.
I think you got that.
You got that.
Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you very much. Any other follow-up? Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys
Appreciate
very
you.
much
Great.
for your support. And I give all the credit to Brandon, Tyler, and our folks, because they're the ones that make this thing work every day. Thank you.
I will say one thing before you walked off. Any call that I have gone on, at least one of them has been there, even in the middle of the night. So that much I want to make sure everybody knows that. I appreciate it. You're always there to help and assist anybody. And that's going way beyond what and I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All three of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next thing is Community Land Trust for discussion.
Madam Chair and board members, the next two work session items are coming back to you for looking for consensus or direction on moving forward. As you're aware, the board had a joint meeting with the Blacksburg Town Council a couple of weeks ago, and the topic was the establishment of a community land trust. There were a lot of details presented at that meeting. There's also been a draft agreement that the county and the town have worked on. What we're looking for this evening is just any remaining questions that you may have regarding that concept. What we'd like to do, what I'd like to ask is if there is a consensus among the group to move this forward, that we have at one of our July meetings the agreement on the agenda for the board to approve, which would allow us to formally become a part of the land trust. Marty, what am I leaving out? Okay, good. So this was just an opportunity for the board, if you have any last questions or are ready for us to move to that next step in this process.
We will go around the room. Supervisor Bone.
Yes, let's have it at our next meeting. This is a great idea. Thank you.
Supervisor DeMotts.
Let's make sure to invite the people from the town to come, but yes, I would like to have the agreement on a future agenda.
Thank you.
Supervisor Fidzikowski.
First of all, I am in favor of it. Something that Supervisor Bone said back when we had that joint meeting kind of stuck with me is, what are we going to start with, 100 homes? And I think the answer was, no, more like 10. And that's kind of like letting the air out of the tires, you know, where we had these big hopes. But you know what? You start out small and maybe you see where it goes. Two things that, actually three things. I've actually had citizens complain about it and say they're not in favor of it. That kind of surprised me. I haven't heard any citizens say they are in favor of it. Again, another surprise. But two other things that I was kind of hoping for, and I should have said something back at that joint meeting, but I was kind of hoping that the costs involved, and I know we talked about CHP running it, administering it, and I was kind of hoping that the costs would be offset. I expected costs to manage it, but I was kind of hoping it would be more offset. And I don't know if there can be any tweaking on that. I know they talked about there would be an additional, besides their mortgage payment, they would be paying a $75 fee or something to that. And I don't remember all the numbers that we spoke of, but I don't know. I was hoping that a little bit of a bite, because the management costs seem to be high to me. But I don't think we ever talked about how many people it would take, what would their salaries be. We never spoke about any of that. So that's something that I kind of would like to kind of look at again and see where we're at for that, and why they would be as high as was what they said they would be. Now I talked myself right out of the second thing I wanted to bring up. But to me, that was one of the more important things. Oh, remember now, see, the light came on. Everything we talked about was in the town of Blacksburg, which, yeah, they need some affordable housing in Blacksburg. There's no doubt about it. I mean, when a house sells same day it's put on the market, they're going to need some help. So, but I would like to see some land in the county also thrown into that mix. But I know we're just taking the baby steps right now, so I understand that, and I would be supportive of it.
Supervisor King.
I'd be in support of meeting again and discussing, and like a lot of things that, you know, I talked about it during the joint meeting, you know, as Steve just said, you know, there's other people who want to live other places in the county too, but I know we start off little and then we can grow, but I think a good thing about this is the housing will be set on your wage instead of the market. That's really going to help a lot of people.
Thank you. Vice Chair Biggs.
So I'm in favor of it, but I just wanted to make sure, if we bring back the agreement, Steve, do you want those questions answered ahead of time before the agreement comes back? I was wondering.
Well, I don't know. would the agreement include the numbers, management numbers, dollar signs?
I'm sure we could request that.
I mean, it does. It's an all-inclusive, this is how the trust will work.
Okay.
That being said, I can certainly pass those concerns on to, Matt Hanratty has kind of been the guru of this, and I can pass that on to him. Matter of fact, I emailed him earlier today to let him know this was on the agenda tonight. I can pass those along, and would, if he's available, would likely expect him to be here the night that this is back on our agenda. If there's any other questions that might come up.
Yeah, it would be good to have some of that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that. It's fine.
Sure.
And again, some of these have already been touched upon by other supervisors, but again, I had that same thing about making sure it's accessible for the county. I know the goal is for it to be accessible downtown or near businesses, but I do want to make it that option to be available to all of our citizens in the county. Had some questions too that would like to be answered that we could probably ask, and then that night about dual ownership. What happens if you have dual ownership and it goes south? You know, that's a concern. Also, what happens when people, because this is it's supposed to be a stepping stone for them. What happens when they do earn wages and they kind of phase out? What does the transition look like? You know, most of the time it's the increase on the land, which they would not own, not necessarily the dwelling. And so concerned about, you know, because you're a house owner or home owner, for that, the improvement costs, the repair costs, and are they going to be able to recoup that money? Those type of questions that I would like to be answered. I have had several citizens have questions about that and just wanted more clarity on what that was. I did have one that opposed it, but other than that, you know, I think this is, like you said, Supervisor Fidzikowski, baby steps to move forward. Because affordable housing, we hear it, it's Chamber of Commerce with businesses. It is something that's not going to go away. And even though we know 10 houses is not really going to make a dent, it's got to move forward. It's opening the door at least. So, yeah. Okay. Supervisor DeMont?
Thank you. I want to say how encouraged I am by everybody's comments tonight. I know I often feel, and I bet some of you guys do as well, that in a lot of cases we're playing whack-a-mole with problems. So we've got this problem, whack-a-mole, we get that one. So I think it's very encouraging to hear support from throughout the county for something. I, of course, want it broadened to be countywide. But as a resident of Blacksburg, if I was to sell my home right now that I've lived in for only 6 years, I'd have to move out of Blacksburg. I wouldn't be able to afford to live in the community that I bought a house in only 6 years ago. And so the housing affordability in Blacksburg in particular, I know it's in all areas, but it is approaching crisis level for you know, people like me working in construction management. You know, I have a good job, and I would not be able to continue to live there if I had to sell my home for some reason. So I appreciate hearing from all of you guys, your support for the program, and wanting it to expand countywide.
Supervisor Bone.
When I used to work for Habitat for Humanity here in the New River Valley, one of the most important statistics that really rung true to me is when a family moves into their own home, the children do so much better in schools. It's just an incredible statistic, and it's an amazing gift that we can give to our fellow citizens, even for 10 houses. That could be 20 kids. That's one classroom, right? So, big deal. Perhaps I didn't ask the question well in our joint meeting, but it struck me, I'm all okay with Community Housing Partners being the agent or the facilitator of this whole land trust. But kind of teeing off of Supervisor Fidzikowski's question, there must be some, and maybe they showed it to us, but maybe they didn't, benchmark their costs compared to others in Virginia to show that they're right in line or they're not right in line, just so that we have something to compare it against. That's the only other thing that I thought of. Thank you.
Good. And I did have a citizen, I'm sorry,
I
Vice
just
Chair.
wanted to know, I guess so Steve and Sherry, you both said that you had some people that were against it. I was wondering if the questions that you brought up addressed the concerns of why they were against it, or do we need to ask some other questions to be answered? Did those questions sort of cover why they were against it?
I think that would cover, yeah, part of it.
Part of it?
Yeah.
Is there something we're leaving out, trying to find answers for, or?
The cost, of course.
Yeah.
The cost to taxpayers, yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, one taxpayer's thinking, okay, well, I'm paying my full share. How
Right.
come this person doesn't have to?
Right, I was
But
wondering.
I don't know how
that.
you address that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other question that a citizen brought was, again, for questioning CHP being the only, why is that not a competitive, why isn't someone else? So, I mean, that's, was a question, I think that Supervisor Bone had asked before. So a citizen brought that question forward too. So these are things that hopefully we can explore and have more conversation with.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the input on that. We will work to, we'll check some availability and work to have that on one of the July agendas for you.
Moving on, establishment of cigarette tax.
Madam Chair and board members, this is an item that we've talked about on a couple of occasions. We tentatively included some funding in the fiscal year 23 budget, assuming that this might become a reality. However, before we move forward into the next steps, I wanted to bring this back to the board's attention, and I believe Angie's going to walk us through a couple of slides with some information, and then again, this is mainly for the board's discussion and direction to staff.
Thank you. Just a short reminder or refresher about where we are with this and how it came to be. Legislation was passed in the 2020 General Assembly that allowed counties to levy cigarette tax for the first time at a maximum rate of 40 cents per pack. And we estimated that $200,000 in yearly revenues could be generated from that. It could be different. It's a pretty broad estimate because we don't really know exactly how many stores would move into the county that might be in a town and so forth, but our estimate is based on 40 cents a pack, which is the tax in Christiansburg. The Blacksburg tax is 30 cents per pack. And the FY23 approved budget does include $100,000, as Craig mentioned, and we have included that for funding for Parks and Rec because we spoke at one of your extended work sessions about earmarking it for that. If this isn't approved, if we don't move forward for this, it's not going to make the Parks and Rec funding go away. We're still going to leave that $100,000 in there, and we know that this year our revenues are projected to come in for 23 with a little bit extra that we didn't want to spend for ongoing items, but we would be able to build that amount in, $100,000 into our budget for 24 if we needed to. We estimate that it would take about 6 months to implement this. The next steps, if there's consensus to move forward, would be for the board to approve an ordinance authorizing the tax, and then staff would work with the Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer to develop assessment and collection and enforcement processes for the tax.
Thank you, Angie. And as I mentioned earlier, this is just to bring this back before the board to see if there's direction from the board on whether or not to move forward.
Okay, we'll start off with questions or comments of Supervisor Fidzikowski.
I am in favor of it, but I would like to see it where it is the same across the board. I don't know how we would work with Christiansburg and Blacksburg on that. I think it should be the same for everyone here, but, and I definitely would like to see the proceeds going to Parks and Rec. I think it's appropriate. I think it sends a good message that, yeah, this is not good, but where that money's going is very good. So, especially with all our new parks being finished or built, I think it's going to be a real benefit. I think, I'm not so sure, at Parks and Rec, how are we doing for lifeguards?
We're fully staffed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're fully staffed for lifeguards. I actually was going to make the comment that our gate fee revenue this fiscal year, as a result, will hopefully be increased. I don't want to make a promise on behalf of Parks and Rec, but last year with half staff levels and COVID restrictions, gate fees at the pool were significantly down. So we should see some of that recover. And Parks and Rec is very happy to not be dealing with being understaffed again this year. Very happy, as are citizens.
Yeah, so my bottom line is I'm good with the tax, but I would like to see it be the same in both towns and the county. That's all I got.
Supervisor King.
Yes, we do.
Well, number one, I think it's wrong. We don't need the money. We've just told Parks and Rec got their $100,000. Number two is, look how everything is going up now. Why should this board be a burden on certain taxpayers? Number three is, go out and talk to some of these convenience stores. There's one in my district, and people come out of Blacksburg. Each time they buy about 5 or 6 cartons of cigarettes because of the money they save. You're actually, if this goes through, you're taking business away from our convenience stores in this county. Right now, people are going to them to get out of the town of Blacksburg's tax and Christiansburg's tax and other localities around us, so they can come to our stores and buy them cheaper. So you're going to cost the convenience stores money. I just do not believe because we have the authority, we should tax anybody anymore.
Supervisor DeMott.
I don't want to follow that, especially not with what I have to say. I apologize. I have a very different opinion. I view sin tax, which is cigarette tax, would be what I would consider a sin tax, like you would tax alcohol or other sins, as a tax of choice. I would encourage this board, if we are given the ability to also tax vapes, e-cigs, all of those products at the highest amount possible. And I'm with Supervisor Fedjakowski about dedicating the revenue stream from this particular tax to Parks and Rec, because as we build and expand our Parks and Rec facilities, we're going to need more employees to maintain them. And this gives us a good way to continue funding some of those positions. So I appreciate this and would like to move forward.
Supervisor Bone.
I understood likewise to Supervisor Fedjakowski. I thought we were hoping to all surrounding municipalities go at the same rate. Does anybody know, like, have the towns already implemented their 30 and 40?
They have the ability to tax before we did, so they were already.
What about the
set it up.
surrounding counties in Radford City? Have they already?
I know Pulaski County has. I
At
think
what
Radford
rate?
City. I don't know. I'll check.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm
I'd
not
really
sure.
like to know, like, when they plan on instituting it or have instituted it and what it is. I understand what obviously Supervisor King, you know, they're quote unquote stealing business away from the towns just because a carton costs $1 million. I mean, it's so expensive these days, but it's not $1 million, obviously, but 40 cents on a pack. Anyway, I get it. But I'm quite supportive of this tax. I think it's going to be put to good use. I think this is a drop in the bucket for the expenses for the future parks. So any little bit will help, and overall that will offset what might have had to have taken from the other parts of our budget. So, yeah, I would just like to know what's going on around us so that we have context for this. Thank you.
Vice Chair Biggs.
I'm supportive. I think we've asked for this every year and we finally got it. I understand where Supervisor King is coming from and I appreciate that. But one thing I've been thinking about, like as the county grows, I think we'll probably have more stores in the county in the future. So, maybe more revenue will be coming in that way too. And I agree with Supervisor Fidzikowski that it would be great if we had it level with Christiansburg and Blacksburg. And it would be interesting to find out what the other localities are doing. But at least in Montgomery County, it would be great if everyone was on the same page with it.
Well, I agree with Supervisor King. I am trying to lower taxes, and I feel that this is unnecessary and would not want to implement another tax on our citizens, especially during the time with inflation and everything being so high, cost of living. I agree that it would take business away from the convenience stores that are not within the town limits. I like the term that Supervisor DeMott's called it a sin tax, but I would not be supportive of this. Any other questions? And then I guess we will go to a consensus vote then to move forward. I think okay. We'll move forward with that. Consensus of the board. Thank you all.
Thank you. And again, all that does tonight is brings it back for more formal action at future meetings with the board. So thank you for the direction on that. And that's all we have for work session, Madam Chair.
Do I have a motion to come out of work session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Demotts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Next item, items of consent. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Demotts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Ms. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Moving on to new business, let's go ahead. Would it be easier, or do you want to add those to the end, or should we get the two ones up front? The new business we're going to add for the sheriff's office, the resource officers, and for our EMS.
EMS. Let's add those.
You don't have to take action on the EMS tonight if you don't want to, but if you want to, we can. We need to do those two appropriations in fiscal year '23, not appropriate them into the '22 budget, or we'll have to reappropriate them at the next meeting anyway. And also, Sheriff Parton shared with me just before he left that the language for the grant requires that it's a non-supplantation grant, so that's important to know, that if you appropriate the funds, then they won't apply for the grant, which I agree that makes sense. It is competitive and we are not likely to get the grant.
So do we want to add that to the end? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. All right, so
I'm still confused.
I thought we're supposed to do it the first meeting or sometime in next fiscal year, you're saying?
We could appropriate it tonight for the sheriff's office, but it will be in effect for July 1st.
It'll be for the fiscal
Okay.
year '23 budget.
That's right.
And we don't need to do it for EMS until
That's
the next
correct.
meeting.
No,
Yes.
tonight we mainly needed a consensus. I mean, you could, but it'd be.
But we don't have a
clean-
resolution prepared.
It'd be
Okay.
cleaner if we bring it back as a resolution, yes.
We
ma'am.
don't have a resolution prepared
That's
for the
correct. We do
SROs
not.
either,
Right.
We do not,
but we can still do that one.
if that's
We
the
can
will
still
of the
do-
board,
Do
yes.
the sheriff, if that's consensus to go forward for
Yeah.
the resource officers, and then we'll wait on the other since we don't need to take action immediately. All right, so let's go ahead and do that first, the resource officers. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Thank you guys for all your support. If you'll go ahead and take a vote, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Special use permit, Mountain Vista Land and Livestock. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Thank you. Next up is authorize the conveyance of lots 2C in the Falling Branch Corporate Park by the EDA to Knight Therapeutics Corporation and certain related matters.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
School supplemental appropriations to FY23 approved budget state revenues.
I would make a motion to table that.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do we have to put table until when? So, yeah.
July 11th.
I will certainly reach out to the interim superintendent to let her know that that was the board's action and see if there's availability on July 11th. I would suggest that you table it to July 11th, barring. Yes.
That's my motion then, July 11th.
And just, is it second yet? Someone seconded, right?
Yes.
Table. You can't discuss during table, right? But you can ask for information. When they go to talk to the superintendent, could they please find out if the contracts are going out and the teachers and the employees are getting a 5% raise? I would please like to know that information because it's been driving me crazy since February. Is there any way you can do that?
I heard that question and we'll convey it verbatim.
Okay.
Any other further discussion? And thank you, Mary, for stating that because we have been constantly asking these questions and can't get an answer. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
This is 6 ayes to table to July the 11th.
Next up, school supplement appropriation to FYI approved budget school nutrition.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
Next up, school supplemental appropriations to FY23 approved budget one-time only bonuses of $975,040. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second discussion?
Is this gonna cover all school employees?
No.
No way.
No.
It's for SOQ positions.
It's for the SOQ positions that the state approved. This is actually a pass-through from the state.
So this money the state's already give us to give them?
That's correct.
So they're not gonna give all employees $1,000?
I don't know if they plan to give all of the employees the $1,000 bonus or not. We'll ask them that too.
Yeah, that's another good question, because I don't, that came up in a discussion earlier tonight. This is just to appropriate the money that's coming from the state for the $1,000, but it doesn't indicate how that's gonna be.
They won't get this money until July the 1st, right?
That's right.
And we're appropriating it tonight?
It would be for July.
For fiscal year 23, yes.
Right.
For the upcoming budget, yes.
Yeah. If they say, all employees gonna get it, could you ask where they're getting other money for?
Yes.
Where they getting it from?
So again, do I have any other discussion? Again, another question and concern is, I do believe when the presentation was presented at our last meeting by Dr. Whitaker and staff, that it was recommended by the governor for them to use SR funds.
ESSER funding.
ESSER funds, I keep saying that wrong,
that's-
ESSER funds, for that, but we did not get, during that meeting, that wasn't answered, correct? Because I did ask how much funding there was in ESSER.
Right.
And so that is also a concern, since it's $1,000 for SOQ positions, not all employees. So I do not know where, if, and how. I mean, again, just questions.
We'll find out.
Just add it to the list.
Just did, yes, ma'am.
Any other discussion? Would there be discussion that we should wait? Good. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
School supplemental appropriation to FY '23 approved budget, school buses.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Supervisor DeMotts?
Question on the resolution PDF, and this just might be me not understanding it. $920,000 in one-time monies to replace 8 school buses. Are they gonna be minivans? I mean, that's not a lot of money for 8 buses.
That's what the school said it would cost for 8 buses.
Over $100,000 per bus? You think it's not a lot?
Gas buses.
Okay, all right. It just didn't seem like a lot to me.
Yeah, it's them, electric buses cost $540,000.
I'm just thinking new car prices are $40,000 and $50,000, so a new bus price, as big as those are, but
I think
I
it was.
just want to make sure I wasn't reading it wrong.
I do believe Mr. Krantz had answered that and said that an average diesel bus was around 125,000. Does anybody recollect that that would be
I thought he said 115.
115? Okay.
Okay.
So
And-
next time you're in shopping for a car, just get your bus.
I'm just going to get me a bus. That's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to live in it.
And we're assuming, of course, electric buses would be much more, so that would not be.
Much more.
Marty, this is a question again we asked, since this is one time and we were giving this one-time money to free up some of their operating funds to help pay with the teachers' raises, along with the already $2.1 million that we appropriated for teachers' raises. Again, if they don't use this money for those 8 buses, we have no recourse.
No.
Other than next time they ask us, we say no.
Remember, they didn't ask us for this, right?
This-
Craig came up with it, which
Right.
is great. It made a lot of sense. You know, it's something that we could do.
One-time funds, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. Fidzikowski?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Chair Blevins?
Aye.
6 ayes.
County Attorney reports.
Yay.
Well, in order to avoid a vote to extend the meeting, I'm going to go ahead and not have a report tonight.
Thank you.
Sacrifice.
Thank you for your sacrifice, Marty.
Mr. Meadows, County Administrator Report.
One item this evening, I want to be the first to wish everyone a Happy New Year because this Friday, we start
New Year?
fiscal year.
New Year?
Yes, new fiscal year starts on Friday, so Happy New Year on Friday. That's all I have.
All right. Supervisor reports. Let's start off with Supervisor Bone.
Just want to make one announcement in case people didn't see it. There is a free concert on Saturday, July 2nd, starting at 4, goes till 10 p.m. at First and Main. They'll probably do it on a regular basis somehow, so be on the lookout for it. Thank you. That's it.
Supervisor DeMonts.
I don't have anything of relevance to report besides we've got a great holiday weekend coming up, and there are a lot of options to avoid drinking and driving, so I would like to encourage everybody to take advantage of an Uber or a Lyft or something that would keep others safer on the road if they made a better choice.
Thank you. Supervisor Fidzikowski.
We got a big wing ding down in Shawsville on July the 4th. We got a parade, we've got music, we've got fireworks, we've got it all. So, big wing ding.
Good job.
Supervisor King.
Don't have no report, but I would, last weekend when we had these storms coming through,
Oh, yeah.
I would like to say how much each department worked together. We had several people going on training, and Christiansburg, Reiner, and the rest of us had people going on training out of state, and just Reiner itself had 14 calls.
Wow.
In less than 48 hours. But we got together, and that's what makes this, that's why I'm so proud of Steve and the rest of the commission working on Elliston and Shawsville Rescue. I mean, you need to come out and run at least one night with them. I know we used to have a board member on here, Chris Tuck. He used to run with Christiansburg some to see just what they done. And it's amazing how you don't work together all the time, but when you do, you know what the other one needs to do, and it all works out. I mean, that's something we can be very proud of. And not to leave short, but the sheriff's department, I mean, they get out there. Some of them had chainsaws in their cars cutting trees out of the roads. I mean, you know, they was helping us and VDOT, and it's amazing how this county, I know we can have different opinions, but when we need each other, we're there.
Thank you.
And for that, I just want to tell each of you I appreciate it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Biggs.
Well said. I sort of want to echo what Supervisor DeMont said about having a safe weekend and July 4th, because recently one of my former students passed away from that kind of thing happening, 30 years old, and it sort of tears your heart out. So everyone try to be really, really careful, please.
Okay. And to echo from Supervisor DeMotts and Vice Chair Biggs, you guys can get a part-time job at the driving school, because as a safety advocate, I will echo that. Make sure you do not drink and drive. Make good decisions. Call a cab or Uber now. Have a designated driver for the holiday weekend. I did want to do a huge shout out to all of our first responders and the Sheriff's Office for the Effort event. It was amazing. It was a very hot day, but just we live in such a wonderful county where all the first responders or dispatchers or fire rescue, police department, sheriff's office, they all come together to support our community of individuals with disabilities. And it's just so heartwarming to see their commitment and the love that they have. So that was an excellent, I always say that our first responders are the heartbeat of our community. They truly are. We are very blessed to live in this area that gives so much, not only as they serve, but they just give so much back to the community. And it's so important for those relationships. Also wanted just to address, I appreciate Chair Cass coming off her vacation in the public address. She directed some of those comments to me. These are questions I had more questions today with the public hearing coming up, but these are questions that I and other board members have been asking for quite some time, and we have not been given those answers. And I'm not sure if that is a breakdown in communication from the prior administration, sharing that with her, but she was at the last last board meeting when some of these questions were reiterated and asked again. So hopefully we can move forward, establish that working relationship, be transparent. But again, these are not questions, these are questions we've constantly asked. And so for us to be effective as a board, we have to have good communication. And that is something that I look forward to moving forward to make sure we can clear any miscommunications and make sure that Ms. Hill will probably do a letter and everybody can write down there, so we'll have a formal request for that. Any other follow-up?
One thing.
Supervisor King?
You know, Craig does his speech, Marty does his, but we got somebody up here that don't do one. Can we start
Ms.
putting him on
Hill?
there?
Ms.
I
Hill,
have
do you?
no report, thank you.
Can we start putting him on here?
All right, we will. And with that being said, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Oh, you did.